Good evening. The time is 6:00 p.m. I would like to call to order this special meeting of the City Council of the City of Emeryville. I would note that this meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format this evening. We're located at 1333 Park Avenue at the Emeryville Civic Center. Members of the public may also join us by participating on Zoom or watching from home. If you are participating by Zoom and you wish to make public comment, you can do so using the raise hand feature on the Zoom bar or by pressing *9 on your phone. I'll recognize you at the appropriate time for comment. I'll begin by asking if the clerk would please take the roll.
Councilmember Carr.
Present.
Councilmember Mora.
Present.
Councilmember Pryforce.
Present.
Vice Mayor Welch.
Here.
And Mayor Bowders.
Here. Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the final agenda for this meeting.
I move approval of the final agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Welch, second by Carr to approve agenda. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Councilmember Mora.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch.
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Ex parte communications. Are there any members of the council who wish to report having had meetings with applicants for tonight's meeting related to the action items on the agenda? I'll start with Councilmember Carr. Do you have any ex partes to report?
Yes, community member from Watergate called me on the appointments, contacted me on the appointments.
All of the appointments?
Just for the Planning Commission.
Okay. Vice Mayor Welch?
I briefly spoke with Robert Prince regarding his application.
Okay. Member Pryforce?
Yes, I spoke to Eugene Sway about the Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I had a brief email exchange with Eugene Sway on Planning Commission.
Okay. And I believe I've spoken to applicant Brooks Jessup about the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. All right. Moving to...
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I received email communication from Celeste Burrows about Rob on the biking commissions.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Now is the time for public comment on non-agenda items. A member of the public who wishes to comment for an item not on the meeting tonight will have 2 minutes to do so. April, did we receive any written comment cards in advance of this meeting?
No, Mayor, we did not.
Do we have any hands raised right now? I'm waiting to join on the public to see myself.
Yes. Claudia Burgos from AC Transit.
Okay. Please give Claudia 2 minutes. Good evening, Claudia.
Good evening, Mayor Bowders and members of the City Council. Claudia Burgos here, Director of Legislative Affairs and Community Relations with AC Transit. I'm just here this evening to make an announcement to let you know that AC Transit has launched a new project to review and update where, when, and how our buses move through our service area, including in the city of Emeryville. We're launching a top-to-bottom analysis of the system. As we know, travel patterns have changed in the wake of the pandemic, and we're also facing significant budget challenges. Therefore, we're gathering data and community input in the coming months to plan a new bus service network with the goal of better serving our riders. Just yesterday, we launched our project website, actransit.org/realign, to help our riders and keep the community informed as we move through this planning process. Tonight, I'm here to ask you to please take our survey and to reach out to your constituents and community members and encourage them to get involved and take the survey as well. Our survey will be open for approximately 1 month through mid-May. In a few minutes, I will forward to you an email announcement that is easy for you to forward to your constituents, or if you prefer to share this information with your constituents via your social media channels. We would appreciate that. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to engaging with you further as we move along in this process to update our service network. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment for an item not on the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, public comment for non-agenda items is concluded. We have 2 action items. Item 6.1 is the Community Advisory Committees, and item 6.2 is the Planning Commission appointment. So we'll take 6.1 first. There are 4 committees as subparts. We'll take each at a time. For committee applicants, when your name is called, you'll have 2 minutes to give a statement about your interest in the committee, your reasons for applying, and anything else you'd like to share with us or know. After we've heard from all applicants for a given committee assignment, there will be a time for public comment, and that will be followed by questions or discussion by members. Actually, we'll allow members to ask a question while you're still at the microphone, and we'll have discussion after the public comment. So the first item up would be a resolution to appoint 3 members, one as a business representative or community member, second as a business representative or community member, and the third as a community member for terms on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, one of those ending in June of this year and will be required to get reappointed for the term that will commence this year, 2 of them for terms that end on June 30th, 2024. We have 4 applicants. One of them is unable to be here this evening and notified us by email. That would be Robert Prins. The application is included in the packet. We have 3 other applicants, Joshua Cohen, Samuel Gould, and Brooks Jessup. So Joshua Cohen is first up. And I don't see Josh Cohen here. Did we receive a communication from Josh Cohen?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay, so the next applicant up is Samuel Gould. Good evening, Sam. And you'll have 2 minutes, Madam Clerk.
All right. I'm Sam Gould. I'm pretty new to this community. I only moved here at the very beginning of February. And I actually moved here because of I saw the new active transportation plans around the region. And I read through them all, and I felt like Emeryville was on the best path to making not just my life, but everyone's life around the area better. 'Cause I get around by biking and walking and taking transit, and I'm deeply passionate about data that like shows how this can improve people's lives, make the community more connected, and I really wanted to be a part of improving those things since that's my everyday life. Like I already read every planning document on housing proposal, every transit thing you do, and like every single page of the bike plan, which is a lot. But I just really want to contribute whatever I can because this is like really my passion.
Thank you. Are there any members who have questions for Sam? No, not at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next applicant who will be invited up is Brooks Jessup. Good evening.
Evening. My name is Brooks Jessup. I am also a new resident here in Emeryville. Having moved here last year from really just over the border in North Oakland. But I've lived in the East Bay for about 20 years, for the better part of 20 years, having come out here for graduate school originally. In my professional life, I am a transportation analyst for the city of San Francisco. The reason I chose to work in transportation is because I do strongly believe that changing the way we move around on an everyday basis is key to making life more sustainable, more safe, more equitable, healthier, and also just plain enjoyable. And so those same urbanist values that motivate me at work also inform my personal life as well. I love starting every day with a bike ride, usually on a route where I get to see lots of interesting birds, whether it's the marina or Shorebird Park. And I take both pride and pleasure in also using my bike to run errands around town, using transit to commute to work. And these are the kinds of things that I've been able to do a lot more of since moving to Emeryville. I've found this city to be an amazing living example of what a community built on urbanist values can actually look and feel like. And that's what attracted me here in the first place, as I think we've heard from Sam as well. And I'm learning a lot every day just from my experience of living here. It's an inspiring experience for me on an everyday basis to interact with the surrounding environment, and that's why I applied for BPAC. I want to participate in, contribute to the process that makes Emeryville such an inspiring and enjoyable place to live. And what I would bring to the committee includes the following 3 things. Is that my 2 minutes?
That is your 2 minutes.
All right, can I give you 3 things really quickly?
No, but if members have questions for you, then they can answer those questions. You can ask you those questions.
All right.
Are there questions for Mr. Jessup? Member Pryforce?
Sure. What would you like to say?
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the 3 things that I think I would bring to the committee are familiarity and fondness for the local bike network, based on accumulation of over 2 years of riding every day through the city. And recently I even started keeping a bike journal, sort of taking down my observations and notes of the bike facilities that I encounter every day on my rides. Also, professional knowledge of transportation planning and analytics, including some formal training in bicycle planning and design. And finally, a particular interest in digital wayfinding that goes back to my time working at Apple Maps. And actually, since moving here to Emeryville, I've been working on a personal side project. It's been going a little bit slowly, to be honest, but a personal side project to build sort of an online routing tool that would allow people to both plan and share rides through the city. As I said, the progress has been a little slow on that, but it has generated some ideas for local wayfinding that I'd love to share with the committee.
Thank you. Are there other members who have questions? Thank you for being here and for your application.
Thank you.
Members, those are the only two applicants who are present right now, so we'll turn now to public comment and see if I was having issues getting connected to the meeting and it's still, well, maybe it's going to let me connect again. Let's see. Do we have any raised hands on comment?
Yes, Mayor, we have Brian Donahue.
Okay, I'd like to recognize Brian Donahue for 2 minutes, please. Good evening.
Hello. So you're talking about appointing new members of the Bike Ped Committee. I got to say that Bike Ped Committee has shown zero interest in bike safety on the bike boulevards. The city stopped doing the traffic counts, biannual traffic counts as required by the general plan, to find out about how much traffic is on the bike boulevards, find out if there's too much traffic, which is unsafe, but the city stopped doing that. And the Bike Committee, the Bike Ped Committee, EPAC has shown no interest. I've asked them, please join with me in asking the city to find out why they've stopped counting the number of vehicles, and they've shown no interest. So anybody that's already been on the Bike Ped Committee, you should not reinstall, because they've shown they're not interested in bike safety on the bike boulevard. Specifically, like Robert Prince, who's a perennial member, he's shown no interest in bike safety on the bike boulevards. I alerted the BPAC to our chief of police, who ruled officially in writing, put it in writing, that cars are allowed to, and trucks are allowed to block the bike lane for up to 72 hours in Emeryville, bike lanes. And that's against an Emeryville ordinance. It's a municipal ordinance, and it's also against the California Vehicle Code. But our chief of police ruled that in error. So I alerted the BPAC of that, and I said, you should do something about this, correct the chief, bring him in, question him. They refused to do it, so they've shown no interest in bike safety. So anybody that's been on the BPAC, you should not reinstate, because they've shown no interest in bike safety. Allowing vehicles to block bike lanes, they're A-okay with that. And also they're A-okay with too much traffic being on the bike lanes, in the bike boulevard, as I just pointed out.
Thank you for your comment. Are there other hands raised, April? I don't see any.
No, Mayor, they're not.
Okay, we need to take him off of speaking, so we don't, that's the background. Got it. Thank you. Okay, seeing no other public comment is closed on item 6.1.1. Members will entertain discussion. Is there any member who wishes to discuss the item? Yeah,
Okay.
Vice Mayor Welch?
I would just like to say it's really exciting seeing new residents jump in and want to participate on the community committees. As, of course, we grow our housing stock in Emeryville, we're going to have newer residents coming and moving. So I just want to say I think it's really refreshing and very exciting to have people who are relatively new, even if they're not new to the area, but new to the city, wanting to jump in and offer their expertise and their point of view and really give back to the city.
Thank you. Member Pryforce?
So I had to disagree with the resident Donahue. Rob Prince, personally, I think he's a really, really good dude. So Celeste Burrows emailed me endorsing Rob Prince. And she did raise a really good point, which is some of the concerns that I have with those on the BPAC, and that is a focus on equity. I'm kind of the equity council member. I bring it up because it's really important. And one of the things that Celeste Burrows mentioned was pedestrian safety, and including pedestrian safety in a lot of the planning when it comes to things related to bikes, transportation, roads. It took me a minute for me to recognize Sam Gould's name, and I now remember that you kind of were trolling me on Nextdoor, and I'm always open to discussions. But I would advise that if you were selected to be on the committee, that how you represent Emeryville is really important. And some of the language that you used, especially towards a sitting council member, are problematic. And so I don't think that disqualifies you. It's very obvious you're very pro-YIMBY and you are very big about your beliefs. But just keep in mind that not all of Emeryville is YIMBY. And if you're going to be on the committee, you're representing all of Emeryville. And so I just want you to keep that in mind.
Are there other members who'd like to comment? Councilmember Mora?
I just wanted to concur with Vice Mayor Welch. It's really good to see new folks to the city getting engaged, and just the enthusiasm was palpable in all of the applications that we received, and for Sam and Brooks who came here in person. So I just want to almost lament that we can't, we have to pick 3 out of the 4.
Others? Councilmember Cower?
Sure. I also thank Brooks and Sam. Thank you both for showing up today and expressing your interest in the Bike Ped Committee. We'd be happy to have newer members on these committees.
So the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee is one of the most active committees in the city. It does very important work on both bicycle and pedestrian safety. And the work that we ask it to do on, has been mentioned by some of the applicants and council members, is really designed to create a livable and sustainable environment. And there's an immense amount of opportunity right now. I had the privilege of having a 1-hour meeting with the California Transportation Commission's Active Transportation Planning Division this morning to talk about how they're prioritizing state grants and funding around sustainable active transportation development in communities that are trying to create more equitable modal choices and mode changes for people. I also want to just concur with Vice Mayor Welch that I think it's excellent that we have newer residents to the city. I've met some of these applicants. I know Mr. Prince personally, but just newer residents to the city who are really engaged and interested and are attracted to our city because of our work in this space. There are 3 positions. One of them is expiring in 2 months, and 2 of them expire a year from now. So I would like to go ahead and make a recommendation. I regret that we didn't hear from Mr. Cohen, and I hope that Mr. Cohen will leave his application on file. I'll just make the note now for all applicants. If you aren't selected for a committee, your application remains on file for up to 12 months. And if you wish to be considered for a vacancy, as was the case for these seats, that they came up early, the clerk can reach out to you and ask if you'd like to be resubmitted. So for anybody who is not able to attend today and wasn't selected, or is thinking about applying in the future, just know that we are looking constantly for opportunities to help people become engaged in the community. So I'd be interested in making a motion to appoint Rob Prince to a term that commences immediately and expires June 30th of this year, so that he can come and present himself before the council again in 2 months and do the interview that the others did today. I would like to appoint Sam Gould as a business representative, or I'll appoint Brooks Jessup in my motion as a business representative or community member for a term that commences immediately and expires June 30th, 2024. And I would motion to include Sam Gould as a community member for a term commencing immediately and ending June 30th, 2024. And that's my motion.
I second. Jinx.
Okay, so motion by the mayor, second by Councilmember Mora to appoint Rob Prinz, Brooks Jessup, and Sam Gould to the appointments that were noted in the motion. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Councilmember Mora,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Thank you all for your applications, and we look forward to the contributions you provide us as members of the BPAC. The next agenda item, members, is 6.1.2, which is a resolution of the city to appoint one member as a business representative for a term commencing immediately and expiring June 30th, 2024, to serve on the city's Budget Advisory Committee. We have one applicant, which is Franco Herrera. And I don't see a Franco Herrera. Did we receive an email or a contact?
No.
Members, there's no interview to be had at this time. It is an agenda item, so now I'll call for public comment on item 6.1.2. A member of the public who wishes to comment on the Budget Advisory Committee will have 2 minutes to do so. I see no members in the room present, but I recognize Brian Donahue for 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm not surprised that Mayor Bowders just voted for Robert Prinz and the other person that's already on the BPAC. Mr. Prinz has shown hostility towards bike boulevards, bike safety on bike boulevards, limiting the amount of traffic. And Mr. Bowders also has shown hostility towards that. On November 18th, 2014, Mr. Bowders told the council that they really should not, they should just get rid of the bike boulevard idea entirely. And he said that, quote, "Many people still drive. We've built a community that brings people into work here in Emeryville, so we have to work with that reality." And then he said there was too much, that's a direct quote from Mr. Bowders. He's saying that we should not have traffic calming on our bike boulevards. He said there's too much traffic on non-Horton Street and on streets that aren't Horton Street, and then we need to put more traffic on Horton Street because there's too much on the other streets. He's trying to make car travel more efficient, more atomizing car traffic. If we're going to divert traffic from Horton in any way, people have a patience threshold, said Mr. Bowders at that night and that evening. And if they're coming here to shop or work, the reality is they're already in their car and there's nothing we can do about it. So Mr. Bowders is against bike boulevards. He's against the whole idea of bike boulevards. He told us on November 18th, 2014 at the council meeting, you could write that down, check that out, go back to the archives, watch the video. And so it's not surprising that Mr. Bowders voted for the people that are already on the BPAC that are also against the bike boulevard concept. That is, cars allowed, but bicycles preferred. We're supposed to have traffic calming. Mr. Bowders is against it. He wants more vehicles on the bike boulevards. So does Mr. Prinz.
Thank you so much for your comment. Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment on the Budget Advisory Committee? Okay, seeing and hearing none, public comment is closed. Members, we have one applicant and one vacancy. The applicant isn't available to be interviewed this evening. Members, would you like to pass the item and consider the appointment at another date, or would anyone like to make a motion or discuss further? Member Mora.
My preference would be to pass.
Okay, others who wish to discuss?
I
Hands?
agree with Councilmember Mora.
Okay.
We can just pass for right now.
Likewise.
Okay, so I'm just thinking about the right way to do this. Mr. City Attorney, we could just simply take no action on it, it just remains vacant. We don't need to take a motion on the item, correct?
Correct. You could just decide not to make an appointment tonight.
Okay, so the consensus from the majority that I hear from is to not make an appointment this evening, so there'll be no motions. I'm hearing no motions on 6.1.2. Okay, we'll pass 6.1.2. Madam Clerk, that item will just be relisted for vacancy with the call in June, please. Okay. Item 6.1.3 is a resolution of the City Council appointing one person as a large business representative for a term commencing immediately and ending June 30th, 2024, to serve on the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Members, there are two applicants for this position, Marshall Huggins and Virginia Williams Belhaj. I do not see them online, or I see Virginia here. Okay, so did we receive any communication from Ms. Huggins?
No, Mayor, we did not.
Okay, I'd like to invite Virginia Williams Belhaj to the microphone and have 2 minutes of comment as to your interest and qualifications to serve on the Economic Development Committee. Good evening.
Hi there. Full disclosure, I didn't know I'd have to prepare anything, so I worked something out on the way here. I represent 1/6 of the hotels that are in the city of Emeryville. Collectively, we probably contribute over $4 million in taxes a year, and that's a bad year because the pandemic hurt us. We collectively sell the city of Emeryville. We all collaborate with each other, and I think that is the main purpose that I am here, is because I know collectively we can bring more people to Emeryville, really highlight the destination that Emeryville is, the beautiful properties, the wonderful businesses. We work with the large businesses in Emeryville for their business transient travel, so that travel that comes here, that stays 1 to 2 days or comes for periodic trainings. And that is the purpose of our industry. But we also get to, I'm so sorry, I'm like tripping all over my words. But what I wanted to point out is that because we represent a large hotel chains, we also have that marketing power behind us to help us get the word out about Emeryville. We're in an ideal location. I think with the space that we're at the foot of the Oakland Bay Bridge, and with all the accessibility to the other cities around us and other wonderful destinations around us, that people just don't know about Emeryville. And we do that for you. We put the word out for you. That's it.
Thank you so much. Are there members who have questions for the applicant?
Hi.
Member Pryforce?
Hi. So you said you said 1/16th or 1/6 of?
1/6.
Okay, because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, do we have
And
16
I'm
hotels?
thinking of the immediate branded properties.
Okay, is that Sonesta or?
Sonesta,
Okay.
4 Points, Hyatt,
Okay.
themselves, and then Extended Stay America.
Okay. Okay. Question. So how have you all sort of managed the competitiveness that with Berkeley building more hotels? They've definitely have been, like really widening that their capacity.
Yes.
What can keep us competitive in terms of the hotel chains? I mean, I know this is about the EAT Act, but I'm curious because I think that a lot of whatever you guys have kind of figured out, the other businesses in Emeryville also need to figure that out as well. So.
Yes. Well, once again, I think it's just getting the name recognition out there. Everybody knows Berkeley, and if you ask, people across the country about Emeryville, they're not going to recognize that name. And I think that is the most important part of it. And also that we're just outside of Berkeley proper, and that's actually a bonus because you're not having to deal with that immediate congestion as you're trying to get to and from the campus. So I hope that answered your question.
Do you have other questions?
No.
Others with questions? Anyone? Member Core?
I don't have a question, but I'm thanking you, Virginia, for showing up here and expressing your enthusiasm in serving. I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I just have a couple questions. So
Sure.
you work for the Hilton Garden Inn specifically? Yes. Okay, so you're employed by them, but your interest is in elevating the profile of all the Emeryville hotels is what I heard. I just wanted to
Absolutely.
clarify that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I don't have any additional questions. Others with questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll turn to public comment. A member of the public who wishes to comment on item 6.1.3 will have 2 minutes. I see no members in the room present. I recognize Brian Donahue for 2 minutes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so continuing on November 18th, 2014, John Bowders told the city council they should not do not certify have bike boulevards in Emeryville, specifically not the Horton Street Bike Boulevard. They were talking about whether that they should do level 4 or level 5 traffic calming. Mr. Bowders was against the whole thing. And among the other quotes I just gave you, Mr. Bowders told the city council the following. It's a direct quote. I would like people to ride their bike, but we have to be practical. So now, because the Brown Act allows Mr. Bowders to answer questions, simple questions like this, as long as you don't get engaged in substantive discussion, I would like to know, what did you mean by that, Mayor Bowders, when you told the council, I would like people to ride their bike, but we have to be practical. That's a direct quote from you. What did you mean by that? And I'll let the rest of my time, you can fill up the rest of my time with your response. What did you mean by that, Mayor Bowders?
Okay, that's the end of the public comment. I'm actually going to...
No, I'm waiting for my answer. I'm waiting for an answer.
Well, you can't keep speaking, actually. You actually can't keep speaking. You have to decide to stop speaking. Okay. So we have before us item 6.1.3, which is the business representative to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Are there any members who wish to discuss or make a motion? Member Mora?
I'll make a motion to appoint Virginia.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Member Mora and a second by Member Corr to appoint Virginia Willems-Belhaj to the Economic Development Advisory Committee for a term commencing immediately and ending on June 30th, 2024. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Thank you and welcome to the committee. Thank you. I'm very excited. Awesome. Okay, that gets us to the last committee appointment for the evening, which is the Housing Committee. This is item 6.1.4. There are two positions. One is up at the end of June, and the other is up at June 30th, 2024 for the Housing Committee. There are 4 applicants for the 2 positions. We have Jose Romero, Matthew Solomon, Brendan Sullivan Saranana, and Melvin Tanganen. If you are here to be on one of those committees, raise your hand. 1 applicant, and Melvin is online. So what I'd like to do is first welcome Matthew Solomon, who's in person, to come up and give 2 minutes as to his interest qualifications for the Housing Committee. Good evening.
Oh, thanks for having me. My name is Matthew Solomon. I'm a resident of Emeryville, applying for the Housing Committee. I've lived in Emeryville for a little more than 3 years now, and have enjoyed getting more involved in understanding the city's challenges and opportunities, of which I think housing is one of them. For the last few years, I've been on the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and learned a lot about the city's transportation plans and goals, as some of the new appointees have talked about, including their active transportation plan. It's also become clear to me that housing plays a central role in transportation, which got me started thinking about what the city's housing policies are, how they might change, and how Emeryville is thinking about longer-term priorities. And like any other Bay Area resident, I'm also confronted regularly with the high cost of housing and the extreme shortage of housing. So we have a strong and compliant housing element, which is very exciting. And I know the Housing Committee has put a lot of work into developing that over the last few years. And we've rightfully been deemed a pro-housing city, with plans to increase both the quantity, quality, and diversity of housing, and ensuring that all residents have access to housing. Actually building that RENA allocation won't be straightforward, and enforcing all of those policies won't be straightforward. And we need to ensure that the housing we have remains well-maintained and suitable for housing across the life cycle, as our Vice Mayor has put it. And I was inspired by one of the recent Housing Committee meetings where they helped walk some of the residents of a larger housing complex through some maintenance challenges that they were having and approaches to managing that, which was something that I frankly hadn't thought was one of the Housing Committee's priorities, but was really inspiring to see. So I'm clearly still learning about housing and the city's policies, but I'm excited to participate in the Housing Committee and contribute in another way to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there members of the council who wish to ask questions of Mr. Solomon? Member Pryforce?
So thank you, Matthew, for Mr. Solomon. Would you? Matthew's okay?
Yeah, Matthew's
okay. Thank you, Matthew, for being on for applying. So there's like almost two Emeryvilles. One Emeryville is happy with the way things are, and another Emeryville that is not happy with where we're going when it comes to housing. Can you bring up an incident where you recognize. I think, wasn't there like a story a while back in the Evil Eye about you having like a rent issue or something? Okay, so it might have been a different Matthew Solomon. Yeah, same name. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, can you share where like something related to housing that is still a persistent issue that hasn't been addressed?
Yeah, I mean, so I can, I guess, speak to my experience, and I know, Councilmember, you've raised the issue before of, rental housing versus owner-occupied housing. And as someone who is, I'm a renter, and in the stage of my life, frankly, where that works for me, and at some point I will be in a stage of my life where I will be looking for a larger apartment or something where I can raise a family and kids. And I think that having that diversity of housing is really important, and I know that the current, complexes that are going up around the city, a lot of them have been, renter occupied, and some would say cookie cutter, I guess is one word to describe them, which I think is for reasons outside of the control of the Housing Committee, outside the control of Emeryville. And I think, pushing the city to do more is important. And I think also, this is something that thankfully hasn't happened for me, but, ensuring that people who are in below market rate housing can stay there and can, aren't kicked out for illegal reasons, and the owner can't convert that to market rate housing is really important. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think that diversity of housing is really important, whether that be size, whether that be who owns the property, whether that be how long the property is available, whether that be if it's for someone who was previously unhoused and is in transitional housing. So I think all of those things is really important, and we'll never reach a medium or a equilibrium that I think everyone is happy with. And I'm happy to acknowledge that, but I think it's important that we at least kind of keep pushing for more and different kinds of housing.
Anyone else with questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you so much, Matthew. Okay, I noticed that we have one of the applicants online, but again, the connection for me keeps failing, so I believe it's Melvin Tanganen is online, and if his hand is raised, their hand is raised, would you please recognize them? Good evening, Melvin. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Hello, members of the Emeryville City Council and members of the public. My name is Melvin Tangonan, a resident here at Emeryville. I've been a resident for 1.5 years now. So I'm a recent graduate from UC Berkeley, class of 2021. I was raised in Watsonville, moved to Berkeley for college, and now working for the University of California Office of the President. So I'm here today to basically express my interest in housing, the Housing Committee and housing advocacy. So, if you don't know, UC Berkeley only guarantees housing for 1 year. And just thinking about that 1 year is very little, for housing accessibility. After my freshman year of college, I had to find my own housing in the Bay Area. Housing is not cheap, being a renter. And, there was no guide in seeing how to navigate the complexity of renting here in the Bay Area. So after, this took a lot of research going to the Basic Needs Center to understand what signing a lease may be or how to qualify for Bay Area housing. So again, it was not an easy process. So that's why I'm here today to express my interest to be part of the Housing Committee, to not only provide input and recommendations based on my experience with housing as an Emeryville resident, but also a Berkeley resident, but also making an impact to make housing accessible. I want to learn more about Emeryville's housing policies and programs to streamline housing in Emeryville. Again, Emeryville is a beautiful city and honored to be a resident here. I look forward to contributing to its mission and advocating for housing affordability. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there members of the council who wish to ask questions of Melvin? Member Pryforce.
Hi, Melvin. So the same question. What are you seeing are some persistent issues as it relates to housing?
Yeah, so I remember when I recently graduated and I had to find housing, Berkeley was too expensive for me, so I decided to look in the Emeryville market. And there was a lot of options, but there was a lot of issues on what property is right for my situation, right? In terms of each complex within Emeryville had its own pricing in terms of rates, and they require different, like the signing of the lease, they require a different amount of to be approved to be a renter for their complex. So some they might request a different down payment of $4,000 and first month's rent. That may be first month's rent. Another one is 2 months rent, things like that. So I think really it's important for us to streamline some kind of resource for residents here in Emeryville to see what housings are out there, what resources are out there, and just really making it more accessible to mostly college students, but also new residents that are moving into Emeryville. I hope to use this opportunity to really learn, the policies that are implemented already within Emeryville, that may be the housing element or, the measures that have been passed here, but also seeing how we can develop new ideas for affordable housing projects.
Member Pryforce.
I'm sorry, Melvin. To clarify, so you're saying that the issue is that Emeryville residents don't have enough information, or they can't find the information?
Sorry, what was the last part?
Yeah, because you mentioned that when you were applying for a home in Emeryville, that you there were some issues as relates to how much you had to put down, and it sounds like, which is why I'm clarifying. It sounds like the problem was that you did not know that what the requirement was, the entry requirements for a home in Emeryville. And so, are you saying that the issue that you feel is persistent in Emeryville is a lack of information?
I think if we can centralize some kind of portal within the Emeryville website, or more information on housing and how things work, that caters to college students or potential Emeryville residents. I think that's the issue of trying to centralize the information, right, for Emeryville housing and how to navigate that.
Thank you.
Others with questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, now is the time for public comment. A member of the public who wishes to comment on item 6.1.4 has 2 minutes to do so. I see no members present in the room. I imagine we have someone online.
We have Brian Donahue.
Okay, let's take 2 minutes from Mr. Donahue, please.
Okay, let the record show that Mayor Bowders did a Brown Act violation the last time I spoke. Public speakers are allowed to use all manner of speaking devices to get their point across. You can use alliteration, you can use metaphor, you can use pregnant pauses, you can use absolute silence, like as a protest. And Mayor Bowders just precluded that, and he interrupted my public speaking. And the fact that I'm not down there at City Hall made him be able to get away with it because he controls the electronic mic. So the message sent to me by Mr. Bowders is, attention, members of the public, always make sure you're here in person, because it's much more difficult to arrest people when you want to violate their rights than it is to just electronically, kill the mic. So I got that message loud and clear. I'll be appearing there tonight, later on, because I don't appreciate Brown Act violations like the mayor just did against me. So regarding the Housing Committee, you guys need to ask these people that want to be on our committee, do they support the general plan? We spent $4 million on our general plan. It is the will of the people of the city of Emeryville regarding housing. That's our will. We know that because it is the most democratically generated general plan in the state of California. We got an award for it, for how democratically vetted it was. So you need to ask the committee members, do you support at a minimum the general plan on housing? Will you support the general plan? In other words, one of the provisions is more ownership housing over rental housing. It says that very clearly in the plan. You should ask them directly, do you support the general plan's ideas about housing, and specifically regarding rental versus ownership housing, since we did spend $4 million on that document.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment? I can't see any, so you have to tell me, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mayor. No, there is not. I did want to mention that at the very beginning of the meeting, we did receive an email from Brendan Sullivan, Sarah Nana, saying that they couldn't attend.
Okay, thank you. And for the record, for the benefit of the public, I don't control the mic, so despite what you might believe about censoring people, I have no control over that. So we'll turn now to council member discussion. Are there any members who wish to discuss? Member Mora.
I was impressed with both Melvin and Matthew's enthusiasm for housing, but also their recognition for the important role it plays in life in the Bay Area. And they've also both alluded to in their application and in their spoken comments that they recognize there's a lot to learn, and they're open to learning more about the housing dynamic in the Bay Area, which I think is very important. It's something nobody has quite yet mastered, and how the interplay of housing with every other aspect of life in the Bay Area is something that we learn new things about every day, honestly. So I would be comfortable with both of them serving.
Thank you. Others wish to comment? Okay, we have agreement over here. Member Pryforce?
So how many seats are available?
Or 2 seats.
2 seats? Okay. Yeah, so my suggestion, Melvin, is to talk to Emeryville residents, to random residents, just talk to people and ask them questions. I don't believe that the centralizing information is one of the top issues as it relates to housing. I mean, there's not much that we can do. Most of these private residences, if you're talking about corporate private residence with a property manager and so on, they list that information on their website. And so if they don't, then there's not much that can be done. So I don't know whether or not a digest for producing that information on behalf of the city. I don't know if that is what many residents prioritize. So I would definitely suggest that that if you are to be on the committee, that you just talk to people. I do want to thank Matthew for your response, and thank you for being open to, as my colleague councilmember mentioned, the dynamic of housing in Emeryville and its needs. Thank you.
Others? Member Core?
I could make a motion if we are
Okay,
ready.
so just before you make a motion, one appointment ends in June, so they'll have to be reappointed in June, and the other ends June of next year. So when you make your motion, please indicate which person goes to which year, please.
I would like to make a motion to appoint to Melvin for the term commencing immediately and ending June 30th, 2023, and appointing Matthew as a community member for a term commencing immediately and ending June 30th, 2024, to serve on the Housing Committee.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion by Member Core and a second by Member Mora to appoint Melvin to the term that commences immediately and ends in June, and Matthew to the committee immediately ending in June of next year. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders?
Aye, thank you. And for Melvin, for your benefit, you will have to be reappointed, but there are reappointment opportunities. You're not termed out or anything in June, so you'll be reappointed again if you reapply again in June. Okay, or you may be reappointed again if you reapply in June. All right, that takes us to 6.2, which is the Planning Commission. So we have 3 applicants for 1 Planning Commission vacancy that commences immediately and ends June 30th, 2025. Madam Clerk, I believe you received a written communication from 1 applicant that they would not be available to do interviews. This time is Yang Ming, is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
So we have 1 applicant who's not available, and we have 2 who are both present. So the format for the Planning Commission interview is different than the committees. Members, in front of you, you have the 6 questions that we asked the planning interviewees, and as the planning commission applicants know, this was sent to them. They got the questions in advance. You get 2 minutes to answer each question. We will move you on to the next question after 2 minutes. When we have finished the 6 questions, the 6th item is actually your closing remarks. There'll be opportunity for questions from the council members. We'll take public comment, and then we'll have substantive discussion about the appointment. So the first applicant here is Diane Martinez. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Martinez, the first question for you, Madam Clerk, are you ready? Okay, the first question for you is a short personal statement for the benefit of the public. The question is, why are you interested in serving on the city's planning commission? And in providing your response, please include a summary of your relevant education, skills, and experience, including any past civic involvement.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the Emeryville City Council. In my day job, I am director at Garfield Foundation, which is a private family philanthropy that gives environmental grants to agencies that are dedicated to ending climate change. And some of you may be familiar with my local accomplishments, which include serving 8 years on Emeryville City Council, 2 years as mayor. I rose to the executive committees of 2 regional bodies, which are East Bay Community Energy, where I served most recently as chair, and as president of Stop Waste. I am interested in serving on Emeryville's Planning Commission to continue the work that has the city recognized with a pro-housing designation from the state. 2 of the things I'm most proud of in my time are helping to craft the landlord-tenant protections and just cause, so that we build the housing the state so desperately needs. We protect the people who already live here at the same time. I'm also proud of the over 1,200 units approved or permitted during my tenure, 371 of which were affordable. I am proud of helping to craft the family-friendly design guidelines. I believe in my time we also instituted the condo mapping of all of our new developments, so that even if they are for rental in the future, they can be for sale. And finally, I served on Emeryville City Council when we put a $50 million housing bond on the ballot, which the voters of Emeryville overwhelmingly approved. And I'd like to remain engaged in the process and see that the housing produced by those bonds, the money produced by those bonds turns into housing.
Thank you. The second question is, what do you see as your role, what do you see as the role of a planning commissioner?
Well, planning commissioners have a lot of responsibilities. They review and make recommendations on land use plans and zoning regulations. They evaluate development proposals and determine if they meet the requirements of zoning regulations and other applicable laws and policies. They conduct public hearings and solicit input from stakeholders in and the community on land use issues. They ensure that development of projects align with the community's long-term vision and goals for growth and development. And they enforce zoning and land use regulations to ensure that development occurs in a safe, sustainable, and equitable manner, and for us here in Emeryville, an eco-forward manner as well.
Thank you. The third question, please describe your knowledge of the city's general plan and any other major planning documents that have been adopted by the City Council in the past 2 years.
Yeah, so the general plan was developed in 2009, and it's the mother lode of all of our planning documents. It discusses the city's goals, policies, and implementation actions regarding the future development. But I'm most intimately acquainted with the city's housing element, which was worked on in the last year of my tenure on City Council, and which was recently adopted. And this planning document summarizes and refers to a multitude of programs, all of which contribute to the health of the city, and all of which I support, including streamlining of planning processes, objective design and development standards, accessory dwelling units, adaptive reuse, city-sponsored development, development opportunities, new housing opportunities, housing and services for persons with disabilities, priority development, rental preservation, transportation, prior identified sites and by right affordability, planning regulation amendments, and tenant protection measures, as I mentioned earlier. Because of its forward-thinking housing element, Emeryville is in the only 15% of California municipalities that have a compliant housing element at this time, you may be aware.
Thank you. Question 4. Please give one example of a recent economic development or housing project in Emeryville that exemplifies your point of view regarding design, community benefit, and/or the community process, and please explain why.
Our city doesn't have a main street, and Bay Street might be the closest thing we've got. And for my family, it's more of a grouping of projects. The South Bayfront Bridge, Horton Landing Park, and the Sherwin-Williams housing development. They're all lending connectivity, vibrancy, and community to a part of the city that was bisected by the railroad. I like the innovation of creating the bike ped path through a historic building and how that invites the use of green space at Sherwin-Williams that otherwise would have been siloed by just the way the buildings are placed. And this falls under transportation planning, but I'm also really looking forward to the development of the upcoming San Pablo Corridor Plan that includes bike ped and transit improvements, as my family and I are often walking on San Pablo. Both of my children go to Annie Yates and have to cross that street multiple times a day, and I can't wait for it to be slower and safer.
Thank you. The opportunity now exists for members of the council to ask a follow-up question for the applicant. Just asked to be recognized. Vice Mayor Welch.
Ms. Martinez, according to the Institute for Local Government and their Planning Commissioner Handbook, one of the roles of a planning commissioner is to promote public interest in the general plan. How do you feel the Emeryville Planning Commission could promote more interest in the general plan?
Well, I think we're coming up on a renewal of the general plan process, and I would love to be an advocate of just personally getting my friends, my neighbors interested in that planning process, because everything that it means to help build this community, I've seen it from the inside out. And for people, there's a public speaker who keeps talking about our existing general plan. People need to take part in our future general plan process as well. My thoughts have changed over my 8 years of serving on Emeryville City Council, and the general plan captured a point in time. However, the housing element, which was revised much more recently, I think captures much more of the urgency of what we need from planning currently in the city.
Thank you. Are there others who have questions for the applicant? No? Okay, thank you so much for your application. Oh, actually, no, you have an opportunity to give closing remarks. I'm sorry, I stopped before the process. So last item on the agenda says, is there anything you'd like to add in closing remarks that would assist us with our deliberations that we have not asked you about, number 6?
Just a thought about zoning. Recently, the Pew Research Trust came out with a study that showed that pro-housing zoning reforms translate into lower rents. In 2017 to 2023, Minneapolis and Portland both built 2 times as many homes as the national average, and they saw their rent increases were 95 to 97% lower than in the rest of the country. So I just want to leave that as a parting thought. I know that serving on Planning Commission is not 100% about housing, but that's my primary interest in serving on the Planning Commission, is to facilitate creating more housing so that there's more equity and equality for everyone to have housing available in the Bay Area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call up the other applicant, Eugene Sway. Eugene, welcome. The first question is your personal statement. Please state why you are interested in serving on the city's Planning Commission, and in giving your response, please include a summary of your relevant education, skills, and experience, including any past civic involvement.
Thank you. I'm interested in serving the city because I'm a resident in Emeryville for 34 years, and have seen an Emeryville that began from a city of toxicity and manufacturing grow into a thriving artists community, evolve into a shopping hub of the Bay, become home to international corporations like Chiron, Pixar, Cliff Bar, IKEA, Pete's Coffee, and now become an infill and redevelopment cityscape, applying new ideas to mature. I want to be a part of those new ideas and I have 40 years of experience to help the city build on its excellent record and reach new levels of imagination, creativity, and substance. I'm a team player that listens carefully to the intentions of individuals, committees, and government organizations to find common ground agreements that mutually benefit everyone and instill empathy, compassion, and belongingness that lead to accountability. I can help develop imaginative ecology applications, affordable housing, grow the art culture of the city where people reach out to one another. I offer solutions to climate change, social unrest, crime, gun violence, and I will ask the city to address the silent voices of domestic violence, of gender preference, of child molestation, of spousal and senior abuse, and move to establish clinics to give victims a place to voice their pain and suffering and receive medical and psychological care, counseling, police, and government support.
Thank you. The second question is, what do you see as the role of a planning commissioner?
I see it as an adjudication position that requires interpreting and discussing existing law and make judgments for the city to follow through on existing ordinances, consider city's general plan and various rules of zoning. We must interpret the rules and develop possible alternate solutions. We find ways to apply the city's rules evenly to everyone and envision possibilities within the existing rules. We contribute new ideas and solutions. We approve or not approve the cutting of trees, civic projects, egress and accessibility issues, landscape design, bird migration paths, residential building reviews, to demolish or not, to create city files in our project to address environmental protection, make a determination about signage, evaluate condo projects, question the city to clarify existing issues, record and consider client suggestions, make planning recommendations, initiate and conduct studies regarding growth, develop city recommendations to the city council for a particular development, and make many other recommendations. The planning role also carries the responsibility to address those issues that are often overlooked. Issues like child abuse, family dysfunction, creation of counseling, psychiatric and social health and medical services that address family health and stability of our city. A planning commissioner has a moral obligation to address issues that strengthen the social fabric of our city.
Thank you. The third question is, could you please describe your knowledge of the city's general plan and any other major planning documents that have been adopted by the City Council in the past 2 years?
The general plan is a vision based on community desires and goals. It's a kind of checklist of city aspirations. It was developed around 2007 and reviewed again around 2015. It's the result of extensive public outreach by the General Plan Update Steering Committee using surveys, multiple workshops, and monthly meetings. Community desires were documented and used to develop the plan. It addresses enhancements of 4 neighborhood centers to serve local community needs, regional retail district along 40th and Shellmon Streets, transit-oriented development of Ramtrak and at 40th and San Pablo, redevelopment of shopping centers into vibrant urban neighborhoods, street grids emphasizing many modes of travel, create more community parks with playing fields, establish an east-west greenway celebrating Temescal Creek, and sustainability and design excellence throughout Emeryville. Another planning document, the Emeryville Green Street project document, has goals I support by making the city multifunctional and safe for all users with attempts to beautify the city and raise its quality of life. It addresses more open space, natural habitats, and managing stormwater flooding while creating more indigenous landscaping, and a network of greenways with streets and the overarching goal to conserve water use. In essence, the Green Street project gives Emeryville a springboard for beauty, artistic engagement, and social betterment.
Thank you. The fourth question, give one example of a recent economic development or housing project in Emeryville that exemplifies your point of view regarding design, community benefit, and/or the community process, and please explain why.
I like the Emeryville Greenway. It illustrates a multidimensional outlook for community benefit, health, fitness, social interaction, the bringing together of residential, commercial, and industrial buildings into an interactive way, and shows how nature and the built environment can be mutually beneficial to one another and create a setting for raised quality of life. It's also an example of how nature and ecological technology can interact when there's good decision making, and how our experiential environments can be educational, beautiful, and combine the presence of art, housing, and ecology. The Emeryville Greenway sets a strong model for interdisciplinary living that should be studied by other cities. It could be expanded upon in our neighborhoods of Emeryville. There are areas where improvements can still be made. For instance, the compacted soil running trails could be continuous and lead from Bay Street Bike Bridge to Ashby Avenue. This would encourage citizens to walk and run, emphasize athleticism and fitness, and bring more population out to use the Greenway. The Emeryville Greenway is a powerful concept that deserves recognition, further refinement, and implementation throughout Emeryville.
Thank you. Now is the chance for council members to ask a follow-up question of the applicant. I recognize Vice Mayor Welch.
Mr. Sway, I have the same question for you as I asked Ms. Martinez. How would you promote public interest in the general plan?
I would be proactive about educating the populace to participate in a dialogue with the city. I would invite city council people to come and talk with people all throughout Emeryville so that they understand what the general plan means, what it was intended to be, and what it could be now for the future. I think what happens now is that many of the citizens of our city don't understand its history, don't understand the process of dialogue with the city council, with the government. And there needs to be much more outreach to create that dialogue. I see a lot of disinterest, a lot of apathy, a lot of disassociation with the government all in all. So somehow there needs to be that action, that outreach to bring the citizenship together with you to see your vision, to have them understand what they're capable of affecting for the future, and create this more intimate dialogue with citizens and the government. I think that's absolutely crucial for the general plan. Mm-hmm.
Others with questions? Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you for your application. You can make a closing remark. Is there anything that you would like to add to provide or assist the City Council in their deliberations?
Yes, I do. Many of you know or have read about my education and my career, my interdisciplinary PhD from UC Berkeley and my scholarship with Harvard University, my work with the Bay Area Open Space Council to create the 20-year plan to develop the entire San Francisco Bay Area, and my design of two Chinese cities. I've won design and planning awards from various international institutions, published 12 international books and portfolios, been featured on international television and in documentary films. I will have an exhibition of my work at the New York Museum of Modern Art in September, and I will give a speech to the United Nations General Assembly about the destructive footprint of architecture and how we must find a new restorative language to design and survive the future. I'm anxious to put my expertise to work to help the city of Emeryville raise its quality of life, be an exemplar of an urban green city, and find untapped possibilities for housing, infuse art with ecology, and promote a city where compassion drives access to emotional psychological counseling to help children, families, and abused individuals find their voice to be safe to tell their story. And let empathy create the city's distinction by promoting health, fitness, and self-esteem to help those who are impaired in need of assistance. I want to help to make these great strides for the city and towards housing, applied ecology, and the use of art to raise the quality of life and help shape our vision of the tomorrow, and face the unique challenges that lay before us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're at the part of the application process for public comment. So members of the public who wish to comment on the applications for item 6.2, the Planning Commission, will have 2 minutes to do so. Are there any members present who wish to comment? Come to the microphone and be recognized for 2 minutes. Good evening.
Okay, I'm here right now because I had to run down here from my home. I was having a comfortable life at my home with my family, but the mayor was censoring my comments, so I have to come down here to defend myself. I guess that's how it's gonna have to be. I can't enjoy engaging with my city council from afar because my civil rights get trampled. So I dare you to have the captain take me out of here, because I dare you to do that. I'm gonna speak. I'm gonna posit my rights, and so I have to be here in person, obviously. Okay, speaking against the choice of former council member Diane Martinez. While she was on our city council for many years, for 9 years, whatever, she tried to overturn our minimum wage ordinance. During her entire time, she never lifted a finger to try to protect bike safety on our bike boulevards, because she, vis-a-vis our general plan and the traffic calming provisions, she never lifted a finger. So it's still in violation. For her entire tenure was in violation. Former Councilwoman Martinez does not have Emeryville values. We know that because that's a general plan provision, the bike boulevards. On housing, former Councilmember Martinez refused to tell us how much housing do we need in Emeryville. Everybody else knows how much we need. We get it from ABAG's RENA numbers. That's a scientifically generated process. But Councilwoman Martinez, former Councilwoman Martinez, said that's no good. She knows better, but she never told us. She would not tell us. So I say that's fatuous. Shouldn't be on an appointed body. She spoke out against the ABAG's RENA. She uses a YIMBY-NIMBY false binary. So if you speak out in favor of the general plan, she will call you a NIMBY, like she called me. So we don't need a person like that on one of our appointed bodies.
Thank you for your comment. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on the applicants for 6.2? Okay, is there anyone online?
No, Mayor, there's not.
Okay, thank you. So seeing none, the public comment portion is closed, and I'll turn to members for discussion. Are there any members who wish to discuss the applicants? Councilmember Mora?
So from my brief time on the Planning Commission, one thing became clear to me is that the Planning Commission, it requires not just a technical knowledge of planning regulations, land use, construction techniques, but it also requires a broader sense of how new development can integrate into the fabric of the city for a more cohesive city, often a vision that doesn't come to fruition for many years later. And I can't think of anybody more intimately familiar with that broader vision and fabric for the city than the former mayor, Diane Martinez. If not for any other reason than she helped shape some of those priorities. So I would enthusiastically support her on Planning Commission.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Welch?
I just want to thank both applicants for applying. I'm not sure if anyone has reviewed the roster for the Planning Commission, but at this time we only have one woman serving. And so I think to add to the gender balance, we should at least add one other woman to the Planning Commission. So I would enthusiastically support Diane Martinez as well.
Others who wish to comment? Member Pryforce?
New people, new ideas. That's what Emeryville needs. New people, new ideas. And I have to be, just going to be frank. The stack is loaded against you, Mr. Sway. I think that the votes have already been counted and decided. But miracles, I believe in miracles, and so miracles can happen. I'm a spiritual man, but I also have a sense of humor, so I'm a laughing man, and I couldn't help but laugh when Diane Martinez came up for planning commissioner. I mean, the cronyism that all of this displays to the people of Emeryville, anyone who knows politics, and the kind of baggage that would come to the Planning Commission as a result of this, of a decision, which it's probably already been decided. As you can see, it just, I mean, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's the cronyism. I know, I'm going to speak to the people of Emeryville. I don't know what it is about Emeryville politicians where after they're done, they can't go on to something else, like something bigger, something political. And that our brand in Emeryville has to be more than IKEA and Pixar. It should be in our leaders. But for some reason, we keep recycling folk and folks who just want to hold on. And I'll make a promise to you, Emeryville, that after I'm done here, I will not be applying for a planning commissioner. I will not be applying. No. I will find a way to support Emeryville in my own way. But yeah, it's pretty obvious when the deck is stacked. And Sam Gould, you and I, we have a difference of opinion. But the reason why I voted A was because you're new. And we deserve new people, new folk, new blood, no matter who is connected to what. And so, I think that this is just another sad day in Emeryville politics, where new people and new ideas, there just isn't enough space. Just like there's barely enough space for Black and brown and Asian home ownership in Emeryville once all this stuff is done. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would like to make a comment and also add to the discussion. Mr. Sway, I am familiar with your credentials. They're quite impressive, and you have been a member of the committee, of the community for 30 years. And I know that you have participated in some form or the other in getting your voice heard at the council or at the community that you live in. And Ms. Martinez, I know you from the city council, and you have added very practical value to it. And I agree with Vice Mayor Welch that you will bring gender balance to the Planning Commission as well as a diverse voice. And therefore, I would like to add my support for former council member Martinez.
Thank you. Are there any, Member Mora?
Just briefly, I can't disagree more forcefully with the remarks from Councilmember Pryforce. And one thing I want to reiterate with my support of applicant Martinez, it's precisely her familiarity with the priorities of the city that I see her potential to come up with new and innovative ideas to help bring that vision and bring out that for the fabric of the city and tie it all together.
Anybody wishing to make a motion on this item?
I can do it.
Okay. What's your motion?
I move to appoint former Councilwoman Diane Martinez to the Planning Commission to serve the seat that's vacant.
The term that expires June 30th, 2025.
Yes.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion by Kaur, second by Mora, to appoint Diane Martinez to the Planning Commission. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Councilmember Mora,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce,
Nay.
Vice Mayor Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Okay, thank you. That item is concluded. That brings us to adjournment of the special meeting. The time is 7:19, Madam Clerk. The special council meeting is concluded. And we will go now to the City of Emeryville successor agency to the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency. Madam Clerk, the time is 7:19. Please note for the record that all members remain present. This time I'll entertain a motion to approve this agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, you moved it?
Yes, I did.
There's a motion by Vice Mayor Welch and a second by Member Corr to approve the agenda. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Councilmember Mora,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Ex parte communications, seeing and hearing none. Now's the time for public comment for items not on the agenda. A member of the public who wishes to comment has 2 minutes to do so for the redevelopment agency. Good evening.
So it looks like it's going to be yimby nimby, yimby nimby, yimby nimby, yimby nimby in Emeryville. Everybody's either yimby or nimby. You take your choice. You can't be anything but yimby or nimby. This is according to the woman you just elevated to our planning commission. Every person in this room is either a yimby or a nimby. Everyone's got to tell us who they are. Which one? Which side are you on? That's yimby. Okay, so yeah, that's 4-1. Who could have guessed that? So regarding the mayor shutting down my speech and forcing me to come here, look, I asked for silence and then you started talking. That's a censorship. I needed my silence to speak for me. That's allowed by law. The Brown Act allows for that. Allows silence. Allows pauses, pregnant pauses, or even total silence. We're allowed to do that. That is our speech, and you trampled my speech. So now I'm seeing that you have these authoritarian proclivities, and you need to stuff that. You're a public official. You're a public servant. You need to serve the public. You need to allow all of us equal and fair access to our city hall, and trampling on our rights, our civil rights, and disallowing us our free speech provisions that the state of California grants us is completely unacceptable in Emeryville. So stop trampling on our civil rights, and also stop criticizing members of the public when we speak. When we come to speak, when we offer our opinions, if you disagree, you have to sit there and you have to take it. You don't push back against us and call us names like you've done before. And by the way, I'm old. I'm a senior citizen. That's ageism. So you've got to stop acting like that, Councilmember Bowders and Vice Mayor Welch. Stop attacking citizen speakers.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment for an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. There's a consent calendar. Members, does anyone...
Mayor, excuse me, there is one raised hand on Zoom.
Oh, there is one online. Could you please recognize them?
It's John Suter.
Okay. Mr. Suter, welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Bowders. I unfortunately had no applications for people to apply for the Commission on Aging. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to promote that I am going to be at the Senior Center tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I've been hoping that the public who has been listening in, whether they're senior or people that are aware of seniors who have ideas on aging in Emeryville, I want to hear about what is working, what is not. And I would like to say that COA's mission is dedicated to promoting a dignified, healthful quality of life for older adults by advocating for vital services, fellowship activity, and being accessible and trusted community resource. And as the advocates for seniors, we want to hear your concerns and suggestions. So I will also be answering questions about how to become a voice for your community by becoming a member of the Commission on Aging. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commenters online?
No, Mayor, there are not.
Okay, public comment is closed. Members, the consent calendar is before you. Is there any items that you wish to discuss or pull for debate? Seeing none, is there a motion on the consent calendar?
I move the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Vice Mayor Welch, second by Member Corr to approve the consent calendar. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Thank you. There are no action items. Madam Clerk, the time is 7:25. This meeting is adjourned. Madam Clerk, the time is 7:25 p.m. I'd like to call to order this City Council meeting for the City of Emeryville on today, Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. Members of the public are invited to join this meeting at Emeryville Civic Center, located at 1333 Park Avenue in the City of Emeryville. You can also join us online via Zoom. And if you wish to give comment by joining us online via Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature on the Zoom bar, or you can press *9 by telephone, and we will recognize you at the appropriate time. This time I'll ask if the clerk would please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Present.
Councilmember Mora?
Present.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye. Present. Sorry.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Here.
And Mayor Bowders.
Aye, here. Okay, this time we'll entertain a motion to approve the final agenda.
I move approval of the final agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Welch, second by Corr to approve the agenda. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders.
Aye, thank you. That brings us to special orders of the day. We have two. The first is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Emeryville proclaiming April 23rd to 29th, 2023 as the National Victims' Rights Week. And I will read that proclamation now, and Mitzi is here to accept that after I'm completed with it. Okay, a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Emeryville proclaiming April 23rd to 29th, 2023 as National Victims' Rights Week. Whereas more than 26 million people become victims of crime each year, and these crimes also affect family members, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. And the Alameda County Victim and Witness Division is dedicated to ensuring the rights of crime victims and their families by providing services to aid in their recovery from the emotional, psychological, social, and economic impact of crime as they reclaim their sense of safety, well-being, and dignity. The victim witness staff assists victims of crime without regard to the person's race, gender, religion, nationality, sexual orientation and gender identity, or immigration status. And whereas victims are faced with many challenges as a result of crime, oftentimes victims enter systems that fail to meet their needs, provide appropriate services, and fail to treat them with the dignity and respect they deserve, and involving survivors helps victims, services providers, and criminal justice professionals understand the culture, values, and expectations of underserved and unserved victims who seek assistance and justice. And whereas the Alameda County District Attorney's Office Victim Witness Assistance Program was the first program in the United States, established in 1974, beginning with one victim advocate. Today, the Alameda County District Attorney Office employs more than 60 individuals dedicated to working with victims of crime. And whereas in 1984, the Crime Victims Fund was established by the Victims of Crime Act, known as VOCA, to provide a permanent source of support for crime victim services and compensation. Alameda County District Attorney Office Victim Witness Assistance Division partners with survivors, community service providers, criminal justice professionals, and victim advocates who are working together to ensure and enhance the criminal justice response that is accessible, culturally competent, and appropriate for all victims of crime. And whereas in 2022, the Alameda County District Attorney's Office Victims Witness Assistance Division provided over 649 services to more than 105 crime victims in Emeryville, including but not limited to child victims of violence and sexual abuse, stalking victims, survivors of homicide, human trafficking, crimes against elders and dependent adults, sexual assault, domestic violence, robbery, or other crimes. For victims of crime without independent financial means, the District Attorney's Office facilitated financial support through the Victim Compensation Program. And whereas the Alameda County District Attorney's Office has been a leader in outreach and services to underserved populations, including commercial sexual exploitation of children, sexual assault victims from cold hit DNA cases, immigrant youth, urban youth, and victims in the LGBT community, as well as victims with disabilities such as deaf and hard of hearing members. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office has been bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community and building the community's trust in the criminal justice system. And whereas National Crime Victims' Right Week, which is April 23rd to 29th, 2023, provides an opportunity to celebrate the energy, creativity, and commitment that launched the Victims' Right movement, inspired its progress, and continues to advocate and advance the cause of justice for crime victims. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Emeryville in the County of Alameda that we hereby proclaim April 23rd to 29th, 2023 to be Alameda County Victims' Rights Week, and we reaffirm the commitment to respect and enforce victims' rights and addressing the needs during Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and express our deepest appreciation for those victims and the survivors of crime who have turned their personal tragedies into a motivating force to improve the response to crime and build a more just community for all. Proclaimed by the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Emeryville on today, Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. I'd like to invite Mitzi from the Alameda County District Attorney's Victims Program up to the microphone to give some remarks and tell us a little bit about the work you do. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate this and want to let you know that we do absolutely take what we do seriously, and we come in every single day ready to take the task on and walk hand in hand with our victims of crime and or family members to ensure there's some sort of restoration of hope and healing, and to do our best to restore their faith in humanity. So thank you for this acknowledgement, and thank you for your time today. And we are absolutely available for any of your guys' questions or needs at any time.
Do other members have questions or comments? I do. I have a few things to say. So I really appreciate you being here. You know, for those who are at home who don't maybe follow the city council, we're not a full-time city council, we're a part-time city council. And my full-time job, I'm the state director at the Alliance for Safety and Justice, and I work with over 180,000 members of our Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice Network nationally. And I professionally work on legislation that's aimed to center policy decisions at the public safety level around victims of crime and to provide health and healing to them. And a lot of our work is with the stuff that you talked about, VOCA, victim compensation programs, and giving people access to that. And I just want to thank Alameda County for a couple things. One, the Family Justice Center is one of the only trauma recovery centers here in the Bay Area. It's very dear to me. I wrote the legislation for Senator Leno that created the trauma recovery centers 7 years ago. So I'm really grateful that Alameda County has one of them in the state and uses it to advance the needs of families, most of whom are in that program because of domestic violence and sexual assault. And I am not a trained victim advocate, but I do work directly with advocates and victims on a daily basis in the work we do on legislation. And helping people navigate trauma is an extremely difficult job that goes unrecognized and definitely underappreciated by the general public. People are victims of crime on a regular basis, and what many people experience as a victim of crime is, for some of them, a completely life-altering event. I have, seen people who self-neglect, neglect their children, cannot get out of bed in the morning, can't continue with work because of their experience as a survivor of a violent crime. And so the work you and the others do, I just want to extend my very heartfelt appreciation to, because secondary trauma and derivative trauma on family members and the advocates and those who support people who have been victims is also a really taxing thing on a person. And so, I just want to extend my appreciation for you coming out and sitting through our committee appointments this evening to receive this recognition. And National Crime Victims' Rights Week is a very important week in the year, and hopefully one that we don't have to spend as much time on in the future because we're successful at our work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I want to thank you for that.
Acknowledgement. I will definitely relay this to my brothers and sisters back at the home base, and you are right. It is not an easy job, but literally from our bone marrow, we get up every single day to walk this, and we do this with dignity and integrity and honor, because a lot of us came through the doors as victims ourselves. So we understand the path, and we want to make sure that the path that we send them on is as fruitful and restful as possible without as many obstacles that are already out there. So thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you. I have this for you, if you'd like to take this back to the office.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's your friend's name? Okay.
The dog's father, I love it. Okay, we have one other recognition today. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Emeryville proclaiming April 2023 as Second Chances Month. I had invited the Public Defender's Office to also join us today. They had some car difficulty, so they're not able to join us, but Brendan Woods will present at a future meeting. So whereas every person is endowed with human dignity and value, and whereas redemption and second chances are American values, and whereas an estimated 70 million Americans have a criminal record, and whereas there are over 48,000 collateral consequences in California that include the barriers to finding housing, employment, or education, volunteering in the community, supporting their family, and more. And whereas these barriers can contribute to recidivism, which increases victimization and decreases community safety, and can also result in lost human capital, reduced social outcomes, and lost economic output for the community. And whereas the designation of April as Second Chance Month contributes to increased public awareness about these issues, the need for closure for those who have been incarcerated, and opportunities for individuals, employers, congregations, and communities to extend meaningful second chances to people many of us know as our brothers, sisters, children, neighbors, and friends. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Emeryville that the month of April 2023 is hereby named Second Chance Month in the City of Emeryville, and we encourage members of the Emeryville community to make second chances available to all those returning to our community from incarceration, both in their homes and in their hearts. Proclaimed by the Mayor of the City Council, the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Emeryville on today, Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. We don't have anyone to receive that one today. Okay, that will move us to item 5, which is announcements of commission and committee vacancies. Madam Clerk.
Mayor and council, just wanted to let you know that the Commission on Aging had to cancel their meeting this week due to a lack of a quorum. So we thank the council for requesting an item that is on tonight, reducing the membership on the Commission on Aging from 9 to 7, as they would have been able to make it with that quorum number. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6 is council member special announcements or reports on meetings in attendance. Is there any member who has a meeting they attended they wish to report on? Member Kaur?
This was not a meeting, Mayor, but this was an invitation from the union in the Apprentice Hall located in San Leandro, and I had mentioned it to the city manager about how impressed I was. It is a zero net energy facility, and I hope to have something like that here in Emeryville. So.
Excellent. Others with a meeting or event they attended? I just want to take a moment to thank everybody who participated in the city's Easter egg hunt. I think we might have already had that, but past time, I want to thank everybody for that. I also want to just extend my congratulations again to the Compound Gallery. For those who aren't familiar, they relocated their entire art institute to Emeryville from Oakland, and they had a grand opening celebration. The Vice Mayor was also there this past weekend. They're located at the corner of 61st and Hollis Street, and their gallery is there on the corner, and Matt and Lena are phenomenal artists and excellent community members, and I hope you'll take the opportunity to visit them. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 brief things. One, I neglected to mention last meeting, I want to give a little kudos to our Public Works crews. Once a year, they do the silent and gross work of cleaning out the greasy sewer mains along Horton and Doyle. They did this work on the 31st of March, and they spent 10 hours out there scraping and high-pressure jetting through those mains, and they dislodged a lot of major buildups of grease. In fact, they said that the flow rate was cut in half by the buildup in there, so both an important bit of municipal work that goes totally unseen, so wanted to thank those guys for that gritty work. Secondly, to let folks know that the 2023 Emeryville Shoreline Cleanup is happening on Sunday, April 23rd from 9 to noon at Shorebird Park. There's information on the website for people, and we encourage folks to come out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ex parte communications. Are there any members who wish to report an ex parte communication? Okay, seeing and hearing none, now is the time for public comment for the consent agenda or items not on the agenda. A member of the public wishing to comment has 2 minutes to do so.
Yeah, I'd like to take issue with a statement that Councilmember Mora said when he took issue with something Councilmember Preforce had said when he was voting to elevate former Councilwoman Diane Martinez up to the Planning Commission
Preforce.
level. Preforce. I'm sorry, Preforce. I'm sorry. Stand corrected. Mr. Murrow, you need to realize, you may think she's got a lot of expertise or whatever, but she doesn't have Emeryville values. And I don't think we should be forwarding people that are contrary to our values on our committees because it's toxic. As I said, Councilwoman Martinez led a drive to overturn our minimum wage ordinance. It was beaten back by a combination of labor in the Alameda County labor and Emeryville citizens. We had to do an emergency petition drive to beat that back. But it was initiated by Mayor Bowders and also former Councilwoman Martinez. Against our minimum wage, we don't want to be rewarding people like that, elevating them. If the people of Emeryville want to elect her, for an elected position, that's fine. But I don't think you guys should be appointing somebody like that. I just think it's wrong. I think we should have people that have our values on our committee, not somebody that's contrary to our values. And then, as I said, she never lifted a finger for bike safety during her whole time. She talks bikes, but never lifted a finger to provide for bike safety on our bike boulevards. She never, and her whole time on it, and all she had to do is just follow the general plan. It's nothing radical. She said it was urgent for housing is urgent, she said, when she asked for you guys to appoint her. How does she know it's urgent? How do we know it's urgent? She says it's urgent. What's the urgency? We don't know because she won't say. The urgency is increasing developer profits. You shouldn't elevate a person like that.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment for non-agenda items of the consent calendar? Do we have any hands online?
No, Mayor, we don't.
Okay, public comments closed. Members, items 10.1 through 10.5 before you are the consent items. Is there any item you wish to discuss or pull for debate? Seeing none, is there a motion on the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. There's a motion by Member Corr, seconded by Vice Mayor Welch to approve items 10.1 through 10.5 inclusive. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Thank you. Those are approved. We have two short public hearings this evening. Item 11.1 is a public hearing for a resolution of the City Council establishing the updated impact fees for fiscal year 23-24. This is provided for by the Planning Director, Mr. Bryant. Members, have you all read the staff report on this item? Do you have any questions about it? I'd like to make a request with unanimous consent to waive the presentation of this item as it's a routine item for fee increase every year.
I second that.
So any objection? By unanimous consent, presentation is waived on item 11.1. Madam Clerk, the time is 7:42. I open the public hearing. All those who wish to comment on item 11.1 related to the city's updated impact fees will have 2 minutes to do so for the public hearing. Good evening.
Now I return to what I tried to say when the mayor cut me off and did a Brown Act violation and censored my speech. On November 18th, 2014, John Bowders told the city council that the council should not have bike boulevards. No traffic calming on bike boulevards. You can put up the purple signs and the stencils, he said, but no traffic calming. We have to make the streets safe for cars and trucks, he said. People come from out of town to shop here and what have you, and they come in cars, and we need to accommodate them, is what he told the council. And then he said the following, is a direct quote: "I would like people to ride their bike, but we have to be practical." So That's close quote. So I here now would ask the mayor to explain himself. What did you mean by that? We have to be practical. You'd like people to ride bikes, but we have to be practical. I'll let the remainder of my time speak if Mr. Bowders doesn't want to speak. I hereby give you permission to speak now as long as you address my question. What did you mean by that?
Okay, I'm going to take the opportunity because I tried to do that last time, but you didn't listen carefully, and the clerk is the person who mutes, not myself, so there's no Brown Act violation by the mayor. But I'm going to answer your question. You've ceded the rest of your time, so you can have a seat, because it's not a discourse.
I didn't cede the rest of my time. I said
you,
I'll let you
you
speak.
actually did if you said I was going to answer, so you can take your seat and I'll answer your question, or you can stand there and I'm going to let you finish your time.
Okay, I'll talk about it next time.
That's fine. So I'm happy to address the issue. It wasn't appropriate to do it during committees and commission appointments, mostly because that's a disrespect to the people who come here to ask us to evaluate their qualifications. In 2018, I came to a council, I'm sorry, on November 18th, 2014, I came to a council meeting and I spoke in favor of having a practical solution to the concerns that were raised by members of the community about the impact that development along Horton Street would have to bike boulevards and the traffic counts, which you've noted. And I asked for people, I said, I would like everybody to ride a bike, but I know that they won't do that, and so we have to be practical about the matter. And the reality is I can explain to you what I mean by that very readily. So the bottom line is that I would love for us to be a completely car-free community. I have advocated in the last 10 years for people-oriented cities, but I have made it really clear that I understand there's many people who won't get out of a car, and we need to find a safe and equitable balance for how we actually build the community. So I'll tell you what I worked on in the last 8 years to address your concerns about traffic counts on Horton Street, which was the issue at the time. So in my time since then, I served as the lead negotiator at the Park Avenue Residents Committee and negotiated with Lennar for a full diverter at 40th and Horton Street, which is part of the development plan at Lennar. I also negotiated the pass-through through the building at the end of the 45th Street Bike Boulevard. While I was on the city council, I worked with Councilmember Ali Medina, and at the Transportation Committee at the beginning of COVID, we put in the 2 block closures and the treatments on Doyle Street to actually reduce traffic counts dramatically through closing streets through throughput. I also was appointed by the city council to be the negotiator with Wareham Development for their Overland project, which through that secured a complete closure of the Overland Bike Boulevard block between 63rd and 64th, which when that project is built, will actually also dramatically reduce using what you love, level 5 diverters on Overland. And then I recused myself from the Biomed project so I could also go and not only just fight the cut down of many trees, but I also actually negotiated a diverter, which you lovingly wrote about, ironically, at the intersection of Stanford and Horton Street. So that, again, we would take cars off of the bike boulevards because, to your point, we do agree about something. Bike boulevards are not intended to be car priority streets, and I am committed to that. And so what is the practical solution? Well, that was an open-ended question in 2014. I wasn't a council member, and I asked people to be practical about it. You have taken that to mean that I think we should give in on bike boulevards. I think my time in the council has shown quite the opposite in terms of what I've accomplished and what I've worked on, but I don't expect you to look favorably upon that because you don't generally do anything favorable. So there's my answer to your question. We'll turn now back to the item at hand, and that is the public hearing. So there are any other hands, Madam Clerk?
No, Mayor, they're not.
Okay, so the public hearing, public comment portion is closed at 7:47, and we'll turn to discussion. Members, is there any discussion or a motion? Member Pryforce.
Mr. Mayor, you didn't really need to say all that. I mean,
not interested in your opinion on that,
well, you should let people finish talking. Okay, you didn't need to say all that. You know, your record speaks for itself. Yeah, see, it was a compliment, and then you did interrupt me. Yeah, your record speaks for itself. You didn't need to say all that. I'm very new as a council member, so I don't know exactly what the rules are. I didn't know whether or not you were using Mr. Donohue's time. I didn't know whether or not there was, and then I remember the time when I said I was going to speak towards something, and then I went over and you gavelled me, so I really don't know what is going on in terms of what the rules are, or we're just making them as we go along. And I definitely need some help on that. And so I asked the city manager and the city attorney to give me an idea of what the rules are. But when it comes to your record, I think your record speaks for itself. And I think you've done what you can and what you do when it comes to this topic.
Great. Anyone else wish to discuss 11.1? Is there a motion on 11.1?
I move approval.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. Motion by Vice Mayor Welch, second by Member Mora to approve 11.1. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders?
Aye. Item 11.2 is the second public hearing. It's a resolution of the council authorizing the city manager to renew the sewer service charging, billing, and collection at EBMUD. Without objection, is there unanimous consent to waiving the presentation?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
thank
mine is
agree.
yes.
Yes. Okay, I see no objection, so presentation is waived. Madam Clerk, the time is 7:49. I open the public hearing. A member of the public who wishes to come and comment on the sewer service bill will have 2 minutes to do so.
Sometimes the truth is uttered in this room, and then here's going to be at one of those times, following it momentarily. So we just heard Mr. Bowders lay out all the stuff he's done for bikes. But what you haven't told us is the truth about it. The entire time you've been on the city council, you have not moved to protect bicycle safety on the bike boulevards 1 iota vis-a-vis number of vehicles using the bike boulevards. We have 5 bike boulevards. We have overage of traffic on 4 of them. In other words, except for Doyle Street, every bike boulevard has too much traffic, and the bike plan says very unequivocally that's dangerous to bicycles, having too much cars on bike boulevards, too many of them. The general plan has a solution, and that is counting the traffic, vehicle traffic every 2 years, and then using that data when we go over to increase the level of traffic calming. But you have not done that at all. So when you started on the city council, the bike boulevards had too much traffic on them. Guess where we are now? The bike boulevards still have too much traffic on them, except for Doyle Street. You have not lifted a finger. Neither has Councilmember Martinez when she was on. You have not lifted a finger. There's too many cars on the bike boulevards, and it's unsafe. And I've told you for years, and you have been completely unimpressed. So you can talk about abstractions about how much you like bikes, but the fact of the matter is, you have not moved to protect our general plan's provisions to protect bicycles on our bike boulevards. 4 of them, all except for Doyle Street. So I cry foul when you're saying you're Mr. Bicycle. I say no. Mr. Bicycle would do the basic minimum of enforcing the general plan, which is the will of the people, and it's recognized universally that too many cars on a bike boulevard is inherently unsafe, and you've done nothing your entire time you've been on the city council.
Other members of the public who wish to comment on 11.2? Do we have any comments online?
No, Mayor.
Okay, Madam Clerk, the time is 7:52. The public comment portion is closed. Members, is there any discussion or debate? Is there a motion?
Yeah, actually, before that, I was going to say that this looks like a discount by 35% on the sewer. That was an amendment, so it's a good resolution for the citizens of Emeryville, and I will move to, I'm making the motion to approve it, yes.
Okay.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Member Corr and a second by Vice Mayor Welch to approve 11.2's resolution. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders?
Aye. Thank you. Members, we move to item 12, action items. Item 12.1 is the Nellie Hannon Gateway, 3600 San Pablo Avenue loan agreement. And there are 2 items. One is a resolution to appropriate funds from the Low and Moderate Income Housing Fund we'll take up, and then the second resolution is to execute the amended and restated loan agreement between us and RCD. And we'll welcome Valerie Bernardo. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Is there reason? What do I do? Oh. I don't have contacts on tonight, sorry. Okay,
so you just want to share the screen?
Thank you.
And you are this one. Presentation mode.
The buttons or the mouse. Okay, sorry about that. Good evening, City Council. My name is Valerie Bernardo. I'm with the Department of Community Development, and then Chad Smalley, the Deputy Director of Community Development, will also be joining me a little bit later. We're here today to talk about the Nellie Hannon Gateway Project, which is also known as 3600 San Pablo Avenue, and it's an affordable housing project. So, a little background on the project site. It is consisting of 3 contiguous parcels located at 3600 San Pablo, 3610 San Pablo, and 3620 San Pablo. The site is approximately 0.039 acres. I'm sorry, 0.39 acres, so it's a very small site. It's located north of 36th Street and south of 37th Street. The site used to consist of the Doug's Barbecue, the ECAP, which is the Emeryville Citizen Assistance Program, as well as a locksmith store. The property did go into foreclosure prior to 2019. In addition, the owner of the property at that time filed bankruptcy. When they filed bankruptcy, it went before bankruptcy court, and Resources for Community Development was awarded as the stocking bid applicant for the property to acquire the site. At that time, RCD, which is Resources for Community Development, they reached out to the city to seek an acquisition loan to help acquire the site. So in November of 2019, the city actually approved a $2 million pre-development loan to assist RCD in acquiring the site. The terms of that loan was that it was going to be a 3% interest rate loan for a 3-year term. That 3-year term loan would convert to permanent financing upon the award of additional construction financing and the closing of that construction financing. Additionally, there was a requirement that the project be affordable housing, where 25% of the units were going to be set aside for permanent supportive housing, and there was also supposed to be space dedicated to ECAP. One of the contingencies with the financing was that the city manager did have the authority to do 2 one-year extensions as the developer was seeking additional financing for the project. So, since that time, the loan has been modified. The loan is currently $4.5 million in pre-development, and the additional $2 million that was allocated was going to cover pre-development expenses such as engineering, architects, legal fees, permit fees. And the term, again, was extended to cover that 5-year period. That 5-year period currently closes as of November 2023. So what is the project? The project is developed by RCD, or Resources for Community Development, and they've created a limited partnership entity called EVOY LP, which will act as the owner of the property. It'll consist of 90 affordable housing units, where 1 unit will be set aside for a property manager to live on site. 50% of the units will also be permanent supportive housing. We originally required 25%. We've actually been able to get up to 50% on this development. The project will have amenities that include a community room with a shared kitchen for the residents to utilize. It'll include a courtyard on the 3rd floor. It'll have 30 parking spaces, 90 bicycle parking spaces, and there will also be an on-site resident manager who will work directly with the residents, as well as space for third-party case manager entities to come in and also provide services for those who are in need of supportive housing. Additionally, we were able to secure 5,900 square feet of ground floor retail space that will house ECAP to continue to provide their food security services that they provide currently at the site. So what actions has the city taken since that original loan? Well, in 2020 of October, the zoning application was approved. The special thing about that zoning application was that it was the first SB 35 application that the city of Emeryville approved. SB 35 provides for a ministerial approval process, so it shortens the time to get affordable housing development projects approved. It also applied under AB 1763, which allows unlimited density for projects that are near a transit site, which is why we were able to get 90 units on this small site. In March of 2021, the city adopted the Affordable Housing Bond Plan, which allocated funding that was committed in that January of approximately $16 million to that project. In the plan, there's about $5.9 million of low-mod income housing asset funds, $4.5 million of affordable housing fund, and $3.5 million of our Measure C housing bond that'll go to that project. In June, we allocated 89 of our Title 34 authority units to this project. When we did the original bond measure, we sought an additional 500 of affordable housing units for low-income households in the city. 89 of those units will come from that 500 allocation. And then also in June, we also submitted a co-application with RCD for ASIC housing funds. The funding that would be awarded through the ASIC will not only support this project, but will also provide financing to support the 40th Street ped bike improvements, as well as the 40th Street and the San Pablo Bus Hub ped bike improvements. So there's funding for this project that'll support an existing infrastructure project as well. So outside of the $16 million in financing that the city has committed to this project, RCD has been very lucky and has submitted wonderful applications to secure additional financing from the state, the Office of Housing and Community Development. They've received $19 million of No Place Like Home funding, $20 million of Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities funding, and $44 million of the California Accelerator Program. You'll see that the city, while we do have a large investment of $16 million, that represents about 18% of all the funding for the project. Close to 80% of the funding will be coming from the state. So why are we here today? We are here today because the Nellie Hannon Gateway project is looking to close on all of its construction financing this Friday. So we are seeking approval of several documents, the first being our amended and restated affordable development loan program. The loan, again, is for $16 million, of which $4.5 million was a part of the pre-development loan, which was already expended by the developer. So there's about $12 million remaining to go towards the development. The interest rate, again, will be 3%. It'll have a term of 75 years. Repayment of the loan will come from the share of residual receipts. There's 2 allocations of a share of residual receipts that the city will receive. We'll receive our share based off our pro rata investment into the development, but we also have a carve out for an additional 25% of residual receipts coming to pay off the city's loan. There's a requirement for the construction to be completed in 24 months, 2 years. There is a marketing plan requirement that requires the developer to resubmit that plan every 5 years and for it to be approved by the city. There's also a requirement for a supportive service plan and budget, which requires the city to approve that budget and review the service plan every 5 years. And then, of course, there will be a security deed and a promissory note to secure the loan. An additional component of the restated loan is our affordable housing agreement. Within the affordable housing agreement, it outlines the requirements for the affordable housing units. That includes that the project will include the 90 affordable units. I mentioned before, 50% of those units are going to be permanent supportive housing. 39 of those units are set aside for formerly homeless individuals, and the remaining 6 units, which will be managed by, or compliance will be required by the city of Emeryville, will be for special need housing units. And that special need could include transitional age youth, frail and severely disabled, victims of abuse, and a variety of other uses that those 6 units could be occupied by. There are income and rent requirements for this project. The average income of the entire development cannot exceed 60% AMI, while they're going to be servicing households between 20 and 80. During the recertification process, which we require with all of our developments for this project, if a household's income exceeds 80%, they're then going to be required to pay 30% of their income towards the housing in order to continue to stay at the property. If their income exceeds 120%, we've put in a provision because we don't want to evict people, but we're allowing them to stay up until that level. After 120%, they would be provided with a 180-day notice that they are over income and would have to find additional housing so we can make that unit available to somebody else who's at an extremely low income. Additionally, the project cannot increase the rent of a tenant more than once within a year, and the rent must include a utility allowance. So this just is to showcase the number of units that we have within the project at the different unit type. We have about 27 studios. We have 18 one-bedrooms, several two, and a couple of three-bedrooms within the project. These are the rents that will be affordable for people looking to occupy those units. When it comes to income levels, just to give everybody a point of reference, a household of one who's at 20% of AMI is somebody who makes less than $20,000. For our 50% of AMI units, for a household of two, you'd be looking at someone making about $57,150. And for our 80% of AMI units, we allow people up to 80. Some of the other financing is going to restrict the units actually to people at 60%, so the maximum income would be about $68,000 for a household of two to occupy the units. Additionally, within the affordable housing agreement, we have our annual reporting requirement. They'll be required to submit an annual report that consists of a financial report in order for us to ensure that they're putting funding in for replacement reserves, the income certification worksheet, so we can ensure that the units are being occupied by households at a certain income level, and our certificate of continuing compliance, which they're required to certify that they are marketing and occupying the units in accordance with our regulatory agreement. There's also a requirement related to property management. They have identified the John Stewart Company to be the property manager of this development. We've added a few additional requirements into the regulatory agreement. One being that the leasing staff must attend fair housing training every 2 years. That was one of our action items within the Housing Element Program PP to ensure that all of the property management staff is trained with fair housing. So we've gone ahead and incorporated that into the regulatory agreement. We're also requiring all of the staff that will work on the BMR program to attend BMR training with our third-party compliance entity. There's been a lot of turnover in property management, and so we want to ensure that as turnover occurs, that they're always being trained on our requirements and the compliance requirements for our program. There's also a requirement for maintenance standards. The maintenance standards are related to the public right-of-way, so we're talking about landscaping and exterior maintenance, and there's a clause that if at some point the property is not being maintained by the owner or by ECAP, that the city would notify them before the city took on the responsibility of making those repairs and then charging the project for them. Lastly, one of the components of this specific project is going to be the commercial lease requirements. They're actually included in the affordable housing agreement. That lease requirement does require that they lease the project to ECAP for food security service program. If for some reason at some point ECAP decides that they want to move or they're shutting down, then the unit would have to be released to another food service provider to operate out of the space. If the developer or owner cannot identify a food service provider, then they could rent the space to a nonprofit organization for the same terms and requirements that are in the agreement, and that lease would also have to be approved by the city. So again, I mentioned before that we're here because we're looking to close on all of the construction financing on Friday. So our timeline over the next 2 years looks like what we have up here. So we're looking to close on Friday the 21st. The city is been doing several actions over the last several months so that we're prepared to sell our housing Measure C bonds in May. Construction will commence also in May. Again, there's a 2-year compliance period in order to do construction. So leasing should occur about 4 months prior to that, so about spring of 2025, and then construction will commence by May of 2025. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad so he can talk to you about the money.
Thank you. Yes, I couldn't help it. I've been involved with this project for a while, and I wanted a piece of the presentation. So, Chad Smalley, Deputy Director of Community Development. I'm going to walk you through this slide, which is the first of the 2 actions, and this relates to the budget appropriations that makes this loan that was just described by Valerie possible. So in this first line, this is a complicated slide, but I think it'll make sense once I walk you through it. The first slide shows the existing budget for this project, and the columns are each of the various funds that we have that relate to affordable housing. Fund 298 is the low and moderate income housing fund. Fund 299 is our general affordable housing fund. That's boomerang funds that come back to the city and have been earmarked by the council for affordable housing. 239 are affordable housing impact fees that are paid by various developers. And then, of course, the last column is Measure C, which are bond funds that are not yet in hand. The budget is the first line. That is what is in today's operating budget, 3.4 million in low mod, 4.5 million in 299, and nothing in the impact fee. The available cash in these funds is on the next line, and that is 4.7 for 298, 6.6 for 299, and 1.1 million in impact fees. So what we're proposing, because what we are proposing to do is to ask for you to approve this loan in advance of the bonds being sold. So we're requesting that you appropriate those cash balances into this fiscal year's budget in the amounts indicated on this slide: 1.3 in 298, 1.8 in 299, and all 1.1 million from the impact fees. What that does is creates the budget. The bolded line is that would be the new budget after these appropriations. That amount adds up to $12.247 million, the amount we're trying to loan here. And what's remaining in those funds after you do this appropriation is only minimal amounts of money. After the bonds are sold, which again is projected to happen in a matter of weeks, we will then reimburse those funds to the tune of the second to last row on this slide. So 1.3 will go back to the low mod fund, 1.8 will go back to 299, and 383,000 go back to the impact fees. That adds up to $3.5 million, and those funds are coming from the Measure C affordable housing bond. So when we're done and we're reconciled at the last line, the loan is exactly what is in the affordable housing bond expenditure plan. Now, we're doing this because we would like to close this week, and we're selling bonds in a few weeks. And so the implications of this actually are that RCD will likely never draw those funds that we're advancing to the project, but we need to put them in place in order to make good on our commitment. In the extraordinarily rare event that the bonds didn't sell, we would be in a pickle because we wouldn't have any additional affordable housing. We'd have this project funded, but we wouldn't have anything else that we'd be able to do. These appropriations are sized so that we can make good on our commitments in this fiscal year. I would note that in the event the bonds aren't sold, we have bigger problems likely that far exceed our ability to fund new projects in any case. So with that, this is the outline of the appropriations that we're asking for. And we expect this to be relatively seamless in a matter of moving money around from column to column in the budgets. So in closing, this is very exciting for me. As I mentioned, I've been involved with this property and this project for a long time. I want to take this moment to thank both Valerie Bernardo of our staff for absolutely stellar work on this project. It is remarkable how quickly it came together. I also want to thank RCD and our partners over there for what they've done here. Extraordinary leverage. I'm really proud to be presenting this to you tonight, an opportunity to build permanent supportive housing, something that's sorely needed in this region, and to do it with Measure C affordable housing bonds that were approved by over 70% of these voters, and to have a project coming out of the ground mere months after those bonds are sold. I'm just very proud of that, and I'd like to acknowledge Valerie's work on that. And I want to thank the City Council for its support of this project over the years. And with that, staff's recommendation is that you approve the resolutions authorizing those various allocations, appropriations, in order to make the budget work, in order to make this loan, and then secondarily to authorize the city manager to execute the amended and restated loan agreement for us to start this project. And with that, Valerie and I are available for any questions, and Jake Rosen of RCD is online as well if you have questions for them.
Thank you so much. This time we'll go to public comment. Members of the public who wish to comment on item 12.1 have 2 minutes to do so.
Okay, I'm going to talk about what's never talked about when it comes to the topic of providing housing for poor people in Emeryville. And that is what we've been doing over the last 15 10 to 15 years is ghettoizing poor people in Emeryville, putting them in ghettos. Okay, so this housing here is another 100% affordable housing project, and that's great, although the idea of 100% affordable, it runs counter to our general plan, because our plan has a principle in it that says we should not be segregating housing by income. This is not my opinion. This is straight from the general plan. Okay, so the 100% housing would be affordable housing would be a violation of that principle. I'm not going to make a beef with that, because we need affordable housing so much that, you know, I'll say that's okay, even though it's technically against the general plan. But what I have a problem with is ghettoizing further than just in a building. What we're doing is we're placing all the poor people in Emeryville, we're pushing them onto San Pablo Avenue. That's where all the poor people have been, the new housing for poor people has been located in the last at least 10 years. That's a ghetto. We're making a ghetto. And that runs counter to the spirit and direct language of the general plan. Also, this council, especially Councilmember Bowders, Councilwoman Welch also, has encouraged developers to use the pour door, to use pour doors when it comes time to they're building their projects. Now, the developers want to maximize their profits always. That's why they only build rental housing. That's why they never build ownership housing. But another way they can maximize their profits is if they put all the deluxe white people, the wealthy, more wealthy white people in one area of the building, and put the poor in another part, in a different door. It's called a pour door. And this council has encouraged that. That's ghettoization.
Thank you for your comment. Are there other members of the public who'd like to comment on item 12.1? Do we have anyone online?
Mayor Jake Rosen has his hand raised. He's from RCD.
Okay, Jake, if you'd like to make public comment, we'll recognize you for 2 minutes.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for letting me tune in. I just wanted to say thanks so much to the council and the staff for your continued support of this critically needed affordable housing, and for supporting ECAP as well. And I really want to just commend the city for your dedication and your willingness to work with us through this really long process. I've worked in a number of jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area, and I've been so impressed with Chad and Valerie and Charlie and all of the city staff, as well as the council. I'm really proud to be working in Emeryville. RCD has a number of properties throughout the city, and I know we're all really excited to continue that partnership. And I just can't say thank you enough, and we're looking forward to getting this thing started. So can't wait to see everyone at the groundbreaking sometime soon. So much.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other hands raised?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Public comment is closed. We'll turn to discussion and motions. Is there any member who wishes to discuss? Member Mora?
Just one comment and a clarifying question. I think the resolution, the basically front loading the money now and then reimbursing ourselves later from the loan is actually, from the Measure C funds is not that controversial, and I think that's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood, though, that the overall dollar amount that this loan is going to become, that's based on prior commitments. This is not a change in any sense in that way. It's not unanticipated in that way.
That's 100% correct. So when the city council in 2021 committed the $16.7 million, it's still going to be the $16.7 million loan.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Welch.
Valerie, I had one clarifying question. When households reach that 120% AMI and go over, and they then have the 180-day grace period, will they still be paying the 30% of their rent during that time period, or would their rent payment change?
30% of their.
Okay, so they'll still be at that level while they're searching for new housing.
That's correct. And the provision to allow people to go up to that income without having to be displaced is also something we haven't done in projects before. When someone's over income, they either have to move to a market rate housing unit, but in 100% affordable housing projects, there isn't a market rate unit. So giving that allowance and that 180 days is something that we haven't done before, but we want to be conscious to making sure people aren't displaced because they've made better income opportunities.
Thank you.
Others with questions or comments? Member Pryforce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, a comment, which is that I appreciate this transparency for the public, and that, the bonds don't sell, and I'm sure they will. This is how we build trust with the public, and that even saying that, like what you just said, Chad, is helpful. And so, and I think that being able to communicate with folks, and going on to the issue of communication, when it, so instinctually, I'm for 100% equitable housing. Anything that solves a need. But I talked to Emeryville residents, and some of them are more pro mixed use, and which cuts into what we're trying to do. When it comes to the budgeting for this project, and maybe Jay could also answer this question, is there a budget for closing that gap wherein we can get more Emeryville residents on our side so that there isn't some sort of backlash or public outcry or anything wherein people feel that we're building something that they don't want to see happen? Like, is there any way, any education? That I don't know if we've created a communication strategy. And in my time in business, and that's usually one of the most important things is to when you roll out a new product, is to have a communication strategy in case people think it's the end of the world, which most people do. Yeah, sorry.
No, absolutely. So there have been a couple of opportunities in the past for the public to provide input and information back to the city and the developer. There was a community meeting that was held. A notification was sent out to, I think, residents within like a 5,000 square foot distance, notifying them of that public meeting. We've also talked about this project when we did the adoption of the housing bond admin and expenditure plan. And then, of course, this project is also referenced in our housing element. So we've provided opportunities to talk about where our housing is, the projects we have in the pipeline, and what that project is going to entail. Within the housing element, there has been a lot of requests for us to do more supportive housing, especially for special needs groups. So we felt like we were listening and ensuring that there was units set aside for those people. I think going forward, there will be information on our website that we can put out there. And then, of course, when it gets time to do leasing, there'll be more information that's available. There also, I believe, is a project website, Jake can correct me if I'm wrong, where the public can find information. But myself, as well as RCD, is open to always receiving communications for the public, and if there's a need to do more outreach to the community, we can definitely do so. I think that when the project starts coming out of the ground, that'll be another opportunity to maybe even do more communication through news medias about the wonderful project that's coming down the line and the opportunity that'll be made available for people in Emeryville or the surrounding area.
Vice Mayor Welch.
Valerie, have you received a large amount of negative public outcry against this project?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Member Core.
Valerie, thank you so much. I am impressed with your presentation. You seem to be having a lot of knowledge on this. I actually do have a question regarding the bonds, and maybe someone who is familiar with that. Do we have a rating on them already?
We do not have a public rating on them yet, but we expect that to be announced probably tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, the next day.
But we expect it to be at least a AA, or that we are a good risk.
We're confident.
Yeah, so Chad, thank you so much for mentioning the risk. And I just want to make sure that we are going to be a good risk and that there's going to be no, it's going to be very, very minor thing for us to, make good on this resolution if we have to. So thank you, Valerie, for the excellent work, and thank you, Chad. Appreciate it.
Others with questions or comments? Member Pryforce?
Some of the issues that have popped up amongst current occupants, residents in Emeryville, whether they are considered affordable or not, definitely BMR folks' concerns. So I'm going to list them. One is whether or not there's going to be accessibility around automatic doors when it comes to the residents, especially when it comes to that a certain amount of units are supportive housing. So that's going to be that's the thing that comes up. Parking. What is the parking? What does the parking look like? All the members here have parking at home. And so, it's something that, reasonable to ask about. On-site staff, like the requirements for on-site staff, how often they are going to be there. Because one of the things that I just want to make sure that in case we get folks who have issues with any affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, quote unquote, project, that we're saying things that can help alleviate any concerns or fears that they have. The last thing we want is for people to move into units and we're not, as a city, advocating on behalf of them. So on-site staff, in terms of a requirement for the property managers, security. What is the security going to look like? Is it going to look like cameras? Is it going to look like on-site security in terms of staffing, those sort of things, and as well as package theft prevention? Like, are there going to be lockers in those spaces that allow people to not lose their package thefts and make an increase in commercial property theft? And so those are some of the things that, as we're talking, I guess, to the future property managers, is it John Stewart? Was it John Stewart?
John Stewart is the property
Okay,
management entity.
because John Stewart is the name of the Green Lantern, the Black Green Lantern. So I don't know if you knew that, but sorry, geeky. But Chad probably knew, right? Like those are some of the concerns that will come up, and just anything. If those questions come up, or being able to emphasize them. I wouldn't go as far as asking about EV and that sort of thing for this property, but like these are some of the things that have come up and are coming up and do come up now. And I just wanted to know that any future development, especially one that's 100% affordable housing, we've solved those. Yeah. So.
If it's possible, I think Jake may be better at answering all of those questions. Some of those I can answer, but Jake probably has more specifics. If Jake, you're available to.
Hey everyone. I can do my best to answer the questions that came up just now. So I think the first one was ADA. We have very rigorous accessibility requirements because of the publicly funding nature of this project. Most of the common area doors will have auto door operators, and I can provide more specifics over email if that's needed, or if that's something that the community has questions about. Parking, we have 28 spaces on site. We realize that that's not sufficient for what our residents will probably need, and so because of that, we're offering transit passes to folks for, at a minimum, the first 3 years of the property operations, and that funding may be able to continue beyond that, depending on how those transit passes are used. And we also work very closely with our residents on parking management and assisting them with transit use. And we feel really lucky about this site's location on San Pablo Avenue, which has really great transit service and is very walkable. On-site staff, so there will be 2 full-time property managers on the site, 1 full-time maintenance person, 1 full-time janitor. Services-wise, there will be about 4 full-time services staff on site, split between RCD staff and our third-party supportive housing case manager, lifelong medical care. And we feel like that's really, really well staffed for the needs of this property. Security-wise, we will have security personnel on site, basically evenings and full-time on weekends. There's kind of a security desk space in the lobby, so they've got eyes on the front door and elevators. And there is kind of a greeting presence for folks as they come in, someone that will be familiar to residents, as well as cameras throughout the property and on the exterior of the building. And then the last question was package storage. We haven't seen a need for package lockers at our other sites. And so due to space constraints and funding constraints, we're not currently including secure packing storage on site.
Do you have any further questions? Others with questions or comments? I just want to just take a moment to extend my appreciation as well. I want to echo what Chad said and thank a couple people, but more than anyone, I want to thank you, Valerie. So this item was back in, I think it was 2017. We had a study session about this item, and Catherine Furpo was the housing coordinator at the time. And you know, as a person who's lived unhoused and a person who has worked with the unhoused community for many years as a outreach worker and as an attorney for people who are homeless, just really grateful to the council for giving the green light to the staff, even though it said $16 million would it be to put permanent supportive housing here. Really grateful that the council gave staff to go forward with that, and that council supported the acquisition of this block back when it was in the foreclosure and the bankruptcy, and the voters of Emeryville for overwhelmingly approving a bond measure that led to an expenditure plan that you were masterful in helping us craft and put the funding in the right places to equitably contribute to housing opportunities in our city. And I think we thank you a lot, but I just really want to extend to you how personally grateful I am for that. I served on the housing committee before I was on the city council, and this has been a long journey, but I can't tell you just how shocked I was at the state accelerator funds. Just an amazing gift, but really a testament to what we are doing and what our plans and our vision for our community offer people, and the fact that we are in line with where we need to be going, what the state is asking us to do, the federal government is asking us to do, to be funded so quickly, to have, I'm going to just call it now, to have a really good bond rating. We're going to have a really good bond rating, because I was in the bond rating meeting with you and Lawrence, and that was a 2-hour meeting, but we really killed it, talking about what our vision was for this community and the social impact housing like this would have. And I want to thank you, Jake, as well, for all the work. RCD, you've been an amazing partner on this journey, and I volunteer at ECAP, and everybody at ECAP is very excited about this building coming to fruition and the opportunity it holds for them as well. And there's a lot of people who will benefit, not just from the housing, but the service opportunity that comes with this project. With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution under 12.1.1.
I second.
Thank you. There's a motion by the mayor and a second by Vice Mayor Welch to approve the first resolution. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders?
Aye. And item 12.1.2, I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Thank you. Motion by Bowders, second by Welch. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Councilmember Mora,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Thank you, and I look forward to housing a lot of people who are in need. Item 12.2 is the proposed 2023 state legislative agenda. I'd like to thank Nicolo DeLuca from Townsend Public Affairs for sitting through our meeting to come to the last agenda item we have for action items today. And good evening, sir.
Good evening, and my pleasure to the mayor and vice mayor. Great seeing you. To the new council members, great seeing you all. Look forward to working with you. Congratulations officially to the new city manager, to new city clerk, and all the new staff. I don't think I've been here in person since before COVID. It is great to be here. For the record, I brag to my colleagues that I get to come down here, and they're super bummed that they don't get to work with you all that I do. So anyway, so my name is Nicolo DeLuca. I'm a vice president at Townsend Public Affairs. We have the honor of doing your state and federal advocacy work, along with working with you all and your awesome city team to secure funding. So what I'm going to do is, and your city clerk was really great because she very politely told me how to do this, and I'm hoping I can do it right. Oh, wait, oh, hold on. Okay. Sorry. Never mind, now she's gonna have to help me. Anyway, I'm a vice president at Townsend Public Affairs. Great working with you all. We're gonna talk about kind of who we are for the new council members, and then what we're looking at state legislation, and then get your feedback on some of the recommendations that we have. Dramatic build-up.
I know, where's the slideshow? There it goes.
Here we go. And I can just use the scroll.
You have like 7 bills, I believe, right?
I think so, 5 or
Something about
7.
that. So just as they're pulling that up for members, what we'll do is after each bill, we'll allow members to ask questions so we don't get them confused at the end about which one was which. So after each bill, if you have just technical questions, because we have to call public comment before discussion, so you can just ask your technical questions on each bill. We'll take the comment, and then we'll come back, and if there are recommended positions that we all agree on, we'll do those all in one motion. If there's disagreement about positions, we can have separate motions on those items after that.
So I'm just going to blow through some first slides. So we're Townsend Public Affairs, founded by Christopher Townsend. We're an advocacy firm, Sacramento, DC. We're an extension of you all in those capitals. And our firm, we primarily represent municipalities and then nonprofit agencies. We've ranked in the top 10 consistently. Moving forward, we've got offices up and down the state. We are a small firm, but the strength of a large firm. Just kind of some of our marketing materials. More importantly, what have we done for the city of Emeryville? Super proud, because I've worked with you all for almost 15 years. Over $9 million secured in state and federal funding, and then multiple pieces of legislation signed into law. It's really cool hearing about 3600 San Pablo and a lot of the work that you all are doing, because it ties into some of the bills we're going to talk about. So I'll do an overview of where we are in Sacramento, talk about the legislation, both to positions to recommend, and then ones we're going to watch, and then questions. So right now, Sacramento, first year of a 2-year cycle, over 2,600 bills have been introduced. That's the reason why we're going to be focused tonight and with our work with you all, because I don't think you all want to take positions on over 2,600 bills. Where we stand right now, First House Policy Committee. So this week, actually today, there was a massive line to get into the building because we're really ramping up on those committee hearings. June 2nd is the deadline for bills to cross over to the second house. June 15th is the deadline for some state budget action to happen, and I can go into that later. And then minor typo here, August 14th, the legislature comes back, this was my bad, comes back from summer recess, and they go until September 14th. So kind of our focus tonight, tailored engagement on identified priority bills, coordination with the city council and the city team on those bills, and then ongoing weekly updates to the city team about what we're working on and things that are coming down the pipeline, and then effective and focused advocacy efforts, which we've already had a great advocacy day with the mayor in DC, and hopefully soon we'll be able to announce some of those efforts coming to fruition. So first bill, Assembly Bill 817, Assemblymember Pacheco. Don't have a date yet set, but I think it's going to be heard next week. Basically, it allows subsidiary bodies of local agencies, so your committees, to use alternative teleconferencing provisions under the Brown Act without the need of a state of emergency. Recommendation is support. This is greater efforts to encourage public participation. And essentially it says you can call in and participate to committees, not the council, but to committees without needing a state of emergency. Pretty bread and butter local government bill. Our recommendation is support.
Okay, before we move to the next bill, is there any questions about AB 617 from members? I'm sorry, 817? No questions on the bill. You can go to the next bill.
Moving forward. Next bill, Assembly Bill 1285 from Assemblymember Wicks, our former Assembly member, but due to redistricting, we now have Assemblywoman Bonta, requires that individuals supported by the Encampment Resolution Fund receive priority for state-funded permanent housing. As an exact example, and it was almost like the team teed this up for me. So what this bill says is, if you're a municipality and you receive an Encampment Resolution Fund, side note, your neighbors to the south and north both have, then those unhoused residents get priority to be placed into any state-funded permanent housing. So as an example, if you all got an encampment resolution grant, then those unhoused residents would get priority to move into 3600 San Pablo. Pretty awesome bill by the Assemblywoman. Really, it's a way to expedite addressing the unhoused and the permanent supportive housing. That, as of on the drive down, I spoke to her staff, that bill is going to be heard next week. The reason why we recommend support is it ties into your past policies, how you're handling your housing element, past policies, and things of that nature. So we're recommending support.
Are there questions on Assembly Bill 1285? Okay, there's no questions. You can go to the next one.
Also, Assemblymember Wicks, AB 1307, specifies that noise generated by unamplified voices from residents does not have a significant effect on the environment nor residential projects for the purposes of CEQA. Basically, you cannot use CEQA to challenge a housing project by saying those residents going there will make too much noise, and because of it, it should be considered under CEQA. One way of thinking about this is what happened at UC Berkeley, People's Park, and some of those issues. So again, similar to past policies and recommendations, we're also recommending support for this bill.
You have a question? Go ahead.
No question, but I definitely would want to pull it and discuss. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to just make a note. So thank you for letting me know. This one will pull for further debate when we get to the end. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Next up, Assembly Bill 1532 from Assemblymember Haney. Conversions of vacant office building would be expedited streamlining or a by right use. So basically, your residential, your vacant office buildings could be turned into residential units through a streamlined process that would not use a CUP. Again, similar to past policies and positions, we're recommending support for that bill.
Are there any questions for the bill? Questions about it? There's no questions. Go ahead to the next one.
ACA 1, Assembly Constitutional Amendment, Aguiar Curry, lowers the voter threshold from 2/3 supermajority to 55% for local government, for GO bonds and special taxes. So basically, her focus is, if you're going for an affordable housing bond or any infrastructure, sewers, roads, fire stations, police stations, instead of 66%, it goes down to 55%. You all know constitutional amendments, 2/3 in both houses, bypasses the governor. He can decide to sign it or not, and then it goes to a vote of the people. Again, based on your history and track record, recommending support.
Are there questions on ACA 1 about the constitutional amendment request? Okay, go ahead to the next one.
Next one's going to be Senate Bill 423 from Senator Wiener, the extension of what was SB 35, which is the streamlining of multi-use buildings. So again, similar to the Haney bill, it's expedited review, it's the streamlining. So instead of needing a CUP, it's an over-the-counter process. This is the extension of SB 35 with a lot of different qualifiers. And again, based on the past work, the city's been flagged in a good way for using SB 35 for I think 2 or 3 projects. You guys were called out in one of the hearings about faster way to get people housed. So based on that, our recommendation is support.
Are there questions on SB 4? Okay, we have a question, Councilmember Pryforce.
Yes, I'd like to pull that one for discussion.
Okay. All right, and that's the last one you have. And you have a list you wanted to share also, though, of just things you're watching. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of motor through these. So we're monitoring that. So basically, after we get through the recommended bills, maybe in a couple of weeks, come back and have more discussion. Some great housing bills from Assemblywoman Bonta, a bill from Assemblywoman Friedman, SB4 from Senator Weiner. So those are the housing and land use. Moving forward, then another Brown Act open meeting, AB 557. And then governance, rev and taxation. Rev and taxation, that's one we'd want to oppose. And then public safety and cannabis. Something that we're also trying to do is ensure that our delegation, who's been so great to the city, we're supportive of them for some of their key pieces of legislation, Senator Skinner and Assemblywoman Bonta. Yeah, other than that, Q&A.
Okay, so those other ones, members, are in the watch position, which means we can take them up at another time as they develop and have Townsend come back. So before we go into the discussion, I'll call for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to comment on item 12.2 has 2 minutes to comment. Do we have any hands raised?
No, Mayor, not online.
Okay, public comment is closed. And so I heard a request to have further discussion on AB 1307 and SB 423. To move us to the discussion on those items, let me ask. Recommended support was provided by Townsend for AB 817, AB 1285, AB 1532, and ACA 1. Is there anyone who objects to the recommendation of support on those 4 items? Can I get a motion to recommend and adopt a position of support on those 4 items so we can then discuss the other ones?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mora and a second by Core to adopt positions of support for AB 817, AB 1285, AB 1532, and Constitutional Amendment 1, Assembly Constitution Amendment 1. Actually, do you have a question?
Actually, so AC1, is that the Acquiar Curry?
Yes.
Oh, no. Yeah, I would like to
You'd like
that
to pull that one
discussion.
off?
Yes.
Okay, so can I ask if you would amend your motion
Yes.
to, well, I'm asking him, if you
Yes.
could amend your
I'd
motion.
I'd like to amend my motion, yes.
I'll amend the motion to remove ACA 1.
Okay, and you second that still?
I will second it.
Okay, so the motion by Mora and a second by Core is AB 817, 1285, and AB 1532 recommended support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Councilmember Mora,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Okay, so let's go to then iteratively to the next one that was up for discussion, which was AB 1307. This is the bill related to CEQA and eliminating noise from human voices and activities, I believe, from being an eligible CEQA consideration. This is in response to the UC Berkeley litigation.
Absolutely, and so in greater detail,
Yes, please.
AB 1307 would remove the potential for litigants to challenge residential development based on the speculation that the new residents will create unwanted noises. It would also reestablish existing precedent that minor and intermittent noise nuisances, such as from human voices, be addressed through local nuisance ordinances and not via CEQA. As such, no longer could CEQA consider people as noise pollution. That it would be a summation of the bill.
Yeah, I'll open it for
And
discussion.
this has not yet been heard in committee.
Correct. I'll open it for discussion. Anyone wish to discuss? Member Pryforce?
Yeah, so I stand with the people who protested development of the People's Park. And in this bill, it tries to find, it tries to create, not necessarily find a loophole, but tries to create a way to dwarf the effects of CEQA and the effectiveness of CEQA. And so this is a spit in the people's face when it comes to public interests funded by private dollars from big real estate that seeks to diminish anything related to our environment and climate. And yes, and so that's one of the reasons why many climate lobbying groups are not a fan of this. And so I, definitely people make noise, and that's something to be considered. But in actuality, this is something that that fortunately our folks in Sacramento are doing to move around this. And my concern is that this kind of behavior is used in other states in order to circumvent climate-related bills that protect our environment. And if we keep going down this route, then what is CEQA really? And so that's why I oppose this and why this was created. And because they're upset that they couldn't build a development, even though Cal Berkeley has a lot of space to build other homes, because they couldn't get People's Park, they decided to create this bill. And so it's more politics and development interest than it is actually for people. So I oppose this.
Okay, are there others who wish to comment on this? Vice Mayor Welch?
I would just like to say, unfortunately, CEQA has been abused to stop development in so many different ways, and especially with this, people existing in your neighborhood, and you might hear them, is not pollution. That's called living in a neighborhood and hearing your neighbors. You will occasionally hear people if you are not living in a completely secluded area. This CEQA has been used as a complete overreach and as a way to interrupt and stall out housing for many, many, many years, trying to claim that people existing in a neighborhood and you might occasionally hear a garden party is a complete abuse of what CEQA was intended to do, which was to preserve the environment. Not wanting to hear your neighbors is not preserving the environment. It is not harming the environment, you being able to hear a neighbor or hearing children laugh and play outside. So I support it just because I know how CEQA has been abused and used to stop housing from being developed under completely ridiculous guidelines.
Others who wish to comment? Member Corr.
Thank you, Mayor. Nico, you said that this was going to be within the purview of local ordinances, so there.
Wayside, yeah.
Yes, so there is something that can that could be used as a control measure.
Correct.
Okay. In that case, I would absolutely support this.
Okay, others who wish to discuss? Member Mora.
I concur with both sentiments from Councilmember Carr and Welch. I do think this, if anything, one way to preserve the sanctity of CEQA, it's actually to remove kind of embarrassing abuses of it, which I think this bill does.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to throw our support of the City Council behind the AB 1307.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Mora and a second by Councilmember Corr to support AB 1307. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
Mayor Bowders?
Aye. Okay, that passes. That will take us to ACA 1, which is the reduction of the vote threshold to 55% for general obligation bonds for affordable housing. And
infrastructure.
And infrastructure. Thank you, Public Works infrastructure. And is there anything additional that you'd like to present about it that we didn't hear already?
Assemblywoman Aguirre Curry, Dixon, Willows area, chair of local government, Assembly local government. It's been around, I think, almost 10 years now. Something that she looked at last year. And so again, needing 2/3, so would set 60 plus in the Assembly, 30 plus in the Senate. It's definitely something that her office is focused on. They've made it a priority. I suspect probably after the budget, something that would come out, since it's a ACA, since it's a constitutional amendment, it's not tied down to the normal timelines and thresholds of policy committees. So I think as the weather gets warmer in Sacramento, this is definitely something that she's going to push harder on. But her office wants to do it this year.
Okay. We'll open it to discussion. Members who wish to discuss ACA 1, provide comment or question.
Yes, so this bill and
You're now recognized.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Councilmember Pryforce.
Yeah, so this bill, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This bill and there's another bill similar to it that tries to reduce supermajorities. I believe are anti-democratic, and that this is another case of us trying to streamline our ability to move bills and do it because we have a Democratic majority. But what happens when we don't have a Democratic majority? And I think that this bill, as well as all the other bills, and there's a lot more other bills that are doing something similar. And so I'm not, I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of this. This is not. It's not the Senate. It's not Congress where I would be a fan of getting rid of the filibuster. This is state, and a state, they have the ability to talk to the people and get the people to support them. And this is something that I've been contacted by a lot of people that this is something that they do not support. And I am a progressive, and this, I believe, is not progressive. Thanks.
Okay. Others who wish to comment? Councilmember Mora.
I would argue that a supermajority is requiring a supermajority to do important things is actually quite anti-democratic. 55% represents a majority and is therefore quite democratic. So for that reason, I think we should wholeheartedly support this change.
Others who wish to comment? Vice Mayor Welch.
I agree with Councilmember Mora. 55% is a majority. Needing a supermajority doesn't make things more democratic. We have 50 plus 1% for many things. No one's ever said it's not as democratic. So I agree with his sentiments.
Yes.
Member Corr.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to point out that usually the housing and the public infrastructure projects are progressive policies that are trying to pass through. And so I think that the 55% threshold is actually supportive of progressive values and is quite democratic. And so I would support it.
I'll add my comments, which are, I want to align my comments with Councilmember Mora. I work on ballot measures for a living. I've worked on several statewide ballot measures, and I've chaired the campaigns for 4 measures in Emeryville, including a general obligation bond that is awaiting its credit rating right now for Measure C. The threshold, the 2/3 threshold, was actually put in place in most places by conservatives to essentially limit the ability of communities to pass taxes that were necessary to provide services. It was an opportunity for, in some cases, minority white communities to deny infrastructure to predominantly black and brown communities. And the reason this is narrowly tailored to affordable housing and public infrastructure bonds is because there are communities that would like to have more affordable housing and do what this community did, which was to vote in favor of public financing for affordable housing, but they can't do it because of the unrealistic requirement that a 66.667 threshold must be obtained to do that. The consequence of that is, in the aftermath of redevelopment's dissolution in California in 2012, is that cities do not have a funding mechanism whereby they can actually provide affordable housing, publicly funded social housing for their communities on their own. They have to still go to their voters to obtain support to do that. Apart from this is Article 34 of the California Constitution, which requires us to actually get voter approval to even publicly finance units of affordable housing because of the old racist trope that we have to decide how many units of housing for low-income people is even worthy in our community. That needs to be repealed, and that had an ACA of its own last year. And the reality is that these are vestiges of a bygone era wherein communities could exact control through minority management at the polls. So the idea that this isn't saying that every ballot measure goes down to a lower threshold, but it's saying it's not just 50% plus 1, which I agree with Member Mora, is actually inherently the democratic principle. It's even keeping it at 55%, which is what most school infrastructure bond measures have as a threshold already, which we already use for school infrastructure. And it's simply extending this threshold to affordable housing and public infrastructure. And in the cities have very limited authority as to what they can raise on their own as taxes. The state and the feds control most taxation rules, and the city can't just pass taxes on things because it wants to. They're very constrained, and there are caps. In California, the sales tax, counties have a cap. We're at a cap in Alameda County. We can't raise the sales tax if we want to. We can't do that. So there are things that we can and can't do, and if you're going to fund projects, especially affordable housing, in the middle of an affordability crisis and a stability crisis and a homelessness crisis, you have to make accomplishing that a more democratic and a more accessible threshold for the public. So I wholeheartedly support this item, because this is actually how communities move beyond the old way of doing things, which was to allow wealthy and minority wealthy ownership interests in a community to prevent public infrastructure projects and affordable housing, and starve communities of resources that they need. Member Pryforce.
So do you have a list of the orgs that are in support of this of AC1?
Off the top of my head, no, I can get
Okay.
that.
Well, I've gone through the list, and the mayor passionately talked about the history of race and the history of some of these measures, and a lot of what he said is true. But we have the NAACP, we have the Urban League, we have organizations, Black, Brown, Asian, and many other organizations who oppose this bill and have not signed on to this bill. And so, not to question the intelligence of the mayor and his ability to go through the history of redlining, I go for those organizations and why they are not in supportive of something like this. And that's because it comes from big real estate. And yeah, so so I go with them. But if you can pull up, yeah, that'd be great, Nicola. If you could pull up who is in support of the bills, that'd be great. And it'd be great for my colleagues to also check out who are in support of some of these bills.
I will have to get it from the author's office, since they've technically not had the bill up yet. There's not analysis yet, but I can get that from the author's office.
Member Mora.
Well, just based on the merits of the bill and the goal of having a more democratic ability to affect change in our community, I think I'd like to make a motion to put our support behind this bill.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Member Moore and a second by Vice Mayor Welch to support ACA 1. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
Mayor Bowders?
Aye. That passes. We'll move to the last one on the list, which is Senate Bill 423. Would you like to provide additional context on that?
Absolutely. So this is Senate Bill 423 from Senator Wiener. It was first heard in Senate Housing and Governance, Senate Housing Committee. Got out. It's going to be heard in Senate Governance next week. In a nutshell, 2017 SB 35 was passed, signed into law. SB 35 had a sunset. This bill, SB 423, eliminates the sunset of what was SB 35, authorizes SB 35 to apply in coastal zones, subjects local governments to SB 35 streamlining if they fail to adopt a compliant housing element as determined by HCD, provides that if a local government requires units restricted to higher incomes than those required in SB 35 streamlining, then those units meet the affordable housing requirements, authorizes development on a wetland or protected habitat if authorized by any other state or federal law, and then kind of just the last point of importance, requires a local government planning director or other equivalent local government staff to make determinations about compliance with the objective planning standards. There's a couple of others, but that's kind of the high level, boom, right there, here you have it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members who wish to comment or ask questions about Senate Bill 423? Member Pryforce.
So it is the position of the League of California Cities to oppose this bill, and I stand with the League of California Cities. SB 423 is incredibly toxic. This is a Wiener bill that allows to build upon his campaign, completely financed by the big real estate. Once again, we go back to big real estate and YIMBY. This bill, when it comes to I don't even know how to begin. So, okay, the coastal cities. You know, one of my favorite images that's being circulated around the web is a coastal city where you have a field of single zone homes, and there's a 50-foot tower there. And this is the kind of thing that this does. And if a community decides to not want to build it, this bill is the one that is the most punishing towards communities, towards towns, and towards city. Whether it's the limiting the affordable housing to down to 10%. When it comes to new projects, or when it comes to that many of us know of Emeryville's RENA numbers, and that we're going to try to meet the RENA numbers, and that the builder's remedy kicks in even when you have it planned. You still haven't funded it, but you have it planned that you're going to build a housing. But if you haven't built it yet, the builder's remedy kicks in. 423 is a bill that is that a lot of people are around the state are vehemently opposed. It is extremely controversial, and I oppose this. And thank goodness that the League of California Cities also agrees with me.
Others who wish to comment on SB 423? Member Mora.
So I don't think it's news to anybody that the state of California has an acute housing crisis. In short, we just haven't built enough housing. Unfortunately, Emeryville is too small to make a dent in the housing stock in California. But on the state level, if we can get other cities to do their part and support this bill and get them to build the housing that they should be building, that they should have been building for decades, then we would not have this housing crisis, which has led to a homelessness crisis. It's linked to environmental crisis. So for that reason, I think we should wholeheartedly support this bill.
Vice Mayor Welch.
So there's an environmental impact report from July of 1978 that was done by the planning department of San Francisco that they had developed discussing the potential downzoning that would actually happen 2 months later. And it predicted that massively reducing the allowable amount of housing would result in displacement of low to moderate income households, make a negative impact on air quality, and would be through pushing people into longer commutes. And that was just one city. One city was able to impact an entire region. And we know that even 7-8 years before, Oakland and both Berkeley had their own different ordinances that also allowed downzoning in their own cities. So we've got 3 cities just in the region that decided to downzone now 50 to 45 years ago, and now we see what type of crisis we're in. We weren't building to demand, and now we have an impact socioeconomically. It is extremely difficult for not just low-income people to live here, moderate income people also are barely able to survive and live here as well. And this is predicted 50 years ago. This is their own planning department predicted 45 years ago that what we're seeing today was going to be the exact thing that was going on. Our air quality is impacted. Low to moderate income households, elderly households cannot live here anymore. And that was just one city. And like, let's be clear about why some cities don't want to have streamlining, why they want things like local control. Local control just isn't about designing what your city looks like, it's also designing who gets to live there. If you downzone and you're only building a certain type of housing, in this case, it's single-family housing, that means you're saying only people who can afford to live in single-family homes are allowed to live here. And if you can't afford it, too bad, get out of Dodge. We don't care. Now you're allowed to come here and work here. We can extract your labor from you. You can provide the amenities to our communities, but you can't also live here and be a beneficiary of those amenities, of that growth, of that prosperity. You need to go somewhere else. And that to me sounds like that sounds very similar to me of another institution where it extracted labor from people, but then they weren't able to get the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Others who wish to comment? Member Pryforce?
So folks, notice what my colleagues are saying. Notice how affordable housing didn't really come up. And we've been talking about affordable housing for a while now. 10%. It limits the amount of affordable housing that we can require from new developments. This is about streamlining and pushing for more housing to be built faster. You remember Sarah Palin when she would say, drill, baby, drill? Well, this is build, baby, build. That's all this is. Big real estate, big pharma, big oil, it's the same thing. Folks, this is about money. That's what it comes down to. It's about money and getting money into the hands of developers faster and making sure that they are able to place this place this on the backs of cities. And it's important that State Senator Glazier, he said that one of the problems is that cities don't have enough power. Cities don't have enough power in Sacramento. That we're weak, and these are the kind of bills that makes us weaker. And so, and then when I think about cities being weaker, I think about the people being weaker. And so this is just, if you want to know the bill, just look at the author, right? This is the interest in here is more about fattening pockets than it is about actually building housing. Because you can't say in one breath that we're promoting affordable housing, and then another breath said, oh, well, we just want more housing, period. And that's the thing. If we're talking about housing supply or economics, so this is all about trickle-down housing anyway. So if 100 units, and we're limited to 10%, so let's say 10 units out of 100, right? And so let's say you have 10 projects. Then how many non-affordable units are being built out of 10 projects, and how many affordable units are being built out of those 10 projects if it's just 10%? Can you see how if you're actually providing all this supply, because that's what I'm hearing is supply side progressivism, all this supply, and that the supply will actually bring down the numbers, then the numbers actually are being brought down for those luxury market rate housing. It's not being brought down for the affordable housing. And then we can use transportation, we can use all these different things as an excuse as to why we have the affordable housing crisis in the first place. You can't go to the person who poisoned your lake and ask them for the cure. Going back to developers who intentionally shortened the amount of homes being built, that these are the same folks who fight against vacancy rates. I mean, even if you looked at like a city like LA and you compared the amount of vacancies as opposed to actually housing, so it's not about housing or even about homelessness. And we all know that homelessness is so much more about just housing. That homelessness is a very complicated issue, and that issue can be addressed if we actually build homes for the homeless, not building homes for luxury upzoning and market rate housing. I'm from Brooklyn and I see the game and I recognize it and I'm not with it. And hopefully the people are behind me. I mean, it's going to vote, of course, a different way than I am. But we'll see how the people respond to 423 in the future. Thanks.
May I ask you a question? Member Pryforce.
Well, I didn't know we could do that. Is that in the rules? We can ask each other questions.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
About your statement, I just want to understand. I am interested in a couple of things you said. So, with respect, and I'll ask staff just to make sure I have my facts right before I ask my question. So, the project we had earlier on the agenda tonight, 3600 San Pablo.
That's right.
That was an SB 35 project, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the rents for the first third, the first 30 or 45 units of the building were $500 to $800, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so my question is, I heard you say that we need to give more power to cities to solve this, and that this is essentially just a way for large, wealthy developers to make profit off of what goes on in communities to build housing. I guess I have a couple questions. Do you believe that we have a housing shortage?
Yes. I believe that we have a housing shortage. I believe we have a housing crisis, especially as it relates to black and brown home ownership. This bill is not about black and brown and Asian home ownership. This is about rentals all across California, a rental state.
And so my second question is, how would you propose, let's say that the bill doesn't become law and SB 35 expires. Like, what are you or the League of Cities or whomever is advocating against this and saying we need to leave this in the hands of local control? What is the proposal for how homes are going to be provided to the homeless?
In answer to your question, this doesn't solve it. This doesn't solve it.
I understand that's your position. I'm asking you what you would do.
Because I'm answering your question. This issue doesn't solve it, because under this issue, it's like what I say, that if YIMBY existed around the time that the Triangle neighborhood was being built, the Triangle would never pass the snuff. And apparently our new planning commissioner lives in the Triangle neighborhood. So if this project was under the auspices of this bill, then what was it, 90 units? Then that means then we will only, that our developers would prevent us from building more than 9 of those housing units for affordable housing. So this is about numbers. And that's one of the reasons why in the arguments that you all have been making, it hasn't been about affordable housing. It's been about more housing. And that's a trickle down approach to economics. And and like I said, I'm from Brooklyn. Trickle down didn't come from New York. Trickle down came from California. And so there's this thing about not being able to actually address the problem, actually build towards what the people need, that there are solutions for homelessness. There are solutions to solve some of the biggest problems that we have today as it relates to housing. This bill doesn't do it. All this bill does is says that the developers will have a lot more control to tell cities what to do.
Okay, so again, I'll just state that you answered my question without the answer I was looking for, I guess, which is you're telling me what it won't do, and I hear that a lot, but I'm asking you, what are cities going to do to build housing for the homeless? What is the solution then? So let's just say for a moment it's not the law, like what is a neighboring city, we won't name any city, but let's say a neighboring city that isn't producing its housing or meeting its RENA for low and very low income households that's opposing this bill in the same reasons that you are. What is the proposed solution for how they're going to fund and construct housing?
The proposed solution one of the things that California City says, one of the reasons why they don't support this bill is because they says one size does not fit all, because they have the data, they have the people on the ground to know that what San Jose faces is very different from Richmond. What Richmond is dealing with is very different from Hollywood. That across the state, cities have different needs. And notice the interest. That's how you know that this is about developers, is because of the emphasis on coastal lands. Because beachfront property, who doesn't want that? We know what this is. This is about trickle-down housing where you're just building, and this is not about being able to address the needs of the people. And so, your question leads into a fantastic discussion. But notice that the discussion isn't really about homelessness. That this bill isn't really about homelessness. This bill is about getting the developers, because if it was about homelessness, it would require 30-40% of new homes, mixed income, mixed use homes, mixed use zones, to be allocated for affordable housing. That's not what this bill does. If anything, it limits it. And so, I understand that there is a housing crisis, but to be able to tell cities what to do, and the fact is, one of the things that's been happening a whole lot is, I'm a foster care kid, and so the foster care, there was some money being allocated to help foster care youth. What happened? We ran out of money. And that's the thing. Growing up in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy, I saw what happened in terms of city projects, what happened when cities ran out of money, when states ran out of money. And we're already running out of money. Emeryville is already running out of money. And so where is this money going to come from? That's the question. People don't know where the money is going to come from, but the requirement through this bill remains. And that requirement is, if you don't build fast enough, we will force you to. And that is what cities are saying no to. And that is the reason why the League of California Cities opposes this.
Okay, so before you go, I'd like to just state my actual position now, I think. So I'm going to support this today. I'm going to support it because of a couple reasons. One, as I think has been elucidated, the League of California Cities has never actually proposed a solution. They've asked multiple times for the governor and the state early on to reinstate redevelopment, because redevelopment was actually the way in which cities got funding to build affordable housing for a long time. And redevelopment funds had a 20% set-aside requirement for housing, and that's what was done for it. And in fact, inclusionary law across the state was, at the time, 10%, ironically. The reality is that in the aftermath of it, similar to what we did here in Emeryville, and I would disagree that Emeryville is running out of money. I would severely disagree with that. Been the budget chair for 7 years, and we're sitting on, I think, something close to, 94% of our general funds sitting in different funds allocated for it. So we're, I think, probably, well, the bond evaluation will basically tell us. We got an A from the state auditor, and I don't think many cities did. So I would disagree with that, 7 years as the budget chair. But I would say that the reality is that we passed a affordable housing bond, and we did that because that is how you actually fund affordable housing. So I have heard cities say, and I'm the former homelessness policy director at Housing California, state advocacy organization where I ran bills to serve homeless people after I did it directly for over a decade. So it is actually about homelessness. Homelessness, there's this fake dichotomy that people have made. Like we heard a speaker earlier, like you're either a NIMBY or a YIMBY. For a lot of people who don't want to actually get into the nuance and understand the complexities, which I agree with you, like that it is a very complex issue, homelessness. It isn't like cookie cutter, like you're in one camp or the other. Sure, there are people who like to play to that and speak to that and yell in the echo chambers about that, but it is everything from production to preservation to anti-displacement to services to wraparound care to shelter to many other things, to policies that actually protect people and house people and serve people. And it's a combination of those things, and I'm grateful that we've done that in our city. And passing the affordable housing bond put money into the city's coffers for the purposes of helping instigate, or that's not the right word I'm looking for, basically like spur on the construction of affordable housing. And we took city properties that were sitting vacant in our city, redevelopment assets, and we're turning them into homes for people who are working people, low-income people, seniors, disabled people, people who are aging out, transition-aged youth. I mean, we've written a couple laws with your help to literally serve communities that are not served anywhere else in this state, but will be served by the laws we've passed and the policies we've adopted. And what I find curious about the cities in the league that have opposed these legislation items in the past, they say two things typically. One, they say, you're taking away our local control. And yes, that is happening, but that's because cities haven't used it to actually do what we're doing. Most cities don't actually use the control that they still have, that they could use today, to actually develop affordable housing. They don't invest in social housing. They don't put a measure in front of their public and say, support this so we can build a more inclusive community the way we want, which they could do if they chose to do it, and they don't. And then the second thing is people say, this bill doesn't make affordable housing. Well, that's great. It also doesn't paint the sky purple. You know, it doesn't make the train run on time. That's not the point of the bill. The point of the bill, as Member Mora mentioned at the beginning, was to say, cities, you have local control, you have RENA set up for you, you have housing goals, and you have obligations to be contributing members of the state enterprise to housing our community and making our communities whole. Some of us are good actors and some of us are not at the city level. There's no one size fits all about that. I agree with that. There is no one size fits all about that. But the reality remains that if you aren't willing to do what is required, right, then the state has as a policy objective, it's spending money in all these other places. You have the big 13 mayors going and saying they need $1 billion+ for more homeless services. I feel like I'm on crazy pills as a person who spent my days under bridges dealing with chronically homeless people with severe mental health and addiction issues, who spent time in courts and at housing authority hearings defending people from being homeless again. The idea that we are going to spend more and more money on Band-Aids as opposed to building the hospital, which is homes. If you want to heal people who are unhoused, you have to start with a home. For some people, it requires intensive services, addiction and substance use disorder care, mental health care. It requires different things because homelessness is as unique as the people who experience it. There is no such thing as the homeless in a categorical sense. They all, as a person who lived in a car, okay, I am not the same as a person who's living on Wood Street. I'm white and I have privilege. I had an education. My reasons for being homelessness and the age at which I was homeless are vastly different than the reasons, the demographics, and the experiences of the people who are just a half mile from here right now. And we don't treat people as individuals in this discussion. We treat them as a category of people. And the same is true for this discussion with housing. It is really easy to buy into a political trope and say this is all about padding big developers' pockets. I don't have any interest in padding a big developer's pocket. I don't know a big developer personally. I don't get approached by big developers. In fact, that's literally the antithesis to what I was paid to do at Housing California. But the reality is that if cities aren't going to build housing, right, this bill doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, this bill doesn't say, oh, if you're compelled to do it because you fall out of compliance with RENA, you can only build 10%. It says that's the floor, correct? Correct. Thank you. It wouldn't have made our project not 90 units. And the reason SB 35 was beneficial to our housing project at 3600 San Pablo was because the developer who's affordable has to patch somewhere between 10 and 20 different financing streams together in most cases. And the irony in this situation is that they got accelerator funding and didn't need to do all that. But the reality is that most cases, like the transition age youth project we have at 4300 San Pablo, they'll cobble over the next 2 years many pots of money together to make that project work. And what SB 35 did for those cities that are actually interested in affordable housing, in building affordable homes, it cut the development timeline down, and time to an affordable developer is equal to savings, which made it easier for our city to finance a project. We spent less dollars per unit on the home, which means we have more money for more homes, which means more families in need being in shelter indoors. And so in a perfect ideological world, this bill would not be necessary. This bill would not be necessary because cities would do what they're supposed to do, their mandate, which is to approve housing and provide for development in their community that makes their community inclusive and equitably grows across our state. But we don't do it equitably. Cities are at all different levels of compliance with that. And so the state is looking to get cities in compliance with it. And if at the end of the day, we need tools like this that aren't even going to affect our city directly. This would not actually change what we do in Emeryville. That's the hard part that people don't get. We comply with RENA. We have a housing element that's compliant, as was noted earlier. Less than a fifth of the state is in that situation. And we have a pro-housing designation because guess what? We actually do the right things. We do prioritize and incentivize affordable housing and make it affordable to do this. This is actually aimed at other cities that leave the burden to cities like us. And so I'm all in favor of having other cities do their fair share. And if this is what that looks like, and they're upset that it doesn't have all the details, and oh, this won't build affordable housing, this doesn't provide affordable housing, of course it doesn't. It's not intended to do that. And guess what? You haven't done it either. So it is a false narrative. It is a fake answer to what is going on with this. That is not about, this is, sure, it's not building affordable housing, but you aren't either. Welcome to the party. Vice Mayor Welch.
I just wanted to add, of course, we all just went through our housing element process. And so in my day job, I get to investigate municipalities for their state housing law compliance. And we focused on housing elements. And let me tell you, honey, they set up many municipalities, ones who are against this bill, sat up and played around for about a year and a half and either didn't do their housing element, which is their opportunity to have local control and determine how they're going to meet their RENA numbers to their liking. That is what your housing element is supposed to do. People either sat up and didn't do it, did stuff like tried to self-certify and said, screw HCD, I'm gonna just decide what we did was compliant and we're gonna do it anyway. Some of them ignored complete direct directions from HCD, and I won't get into names, but like you cannot do a full ADU housing element. You need to figure out how to build other types of housing. So you talk about local control, and okay, we're giving you an opportunity to meet these numbers. And what do people do? What does a large bulk of these cities do in California? They fool around. And now it's about time they found out, because it's been going on for decades. We're in a housing crisis, we're in a housing shortage, and that is because of local control, because communities decided that building housing wasn't a priority, okay? The paint's on the wall. That's it. This is due to the decisions that they've made over decades, as rents were climbing, as families were getting displaced, and now we are in complete triage mode. We're out of crisis. This is a state of emergency, the level of housing insecurity and homelessness we have in this state. So yes, we have to do things like streamlining. We need different bills that will address all of the issues, because it has climbed over half a century. And now we're here. We're in a state of emergency. This isn't a joke. People are dying. That's it. People are dying. Do you know the life expectancy of someone who's experiencing homelessness? 50 years. 50 years old. That's the average. That means people are dying before that. And it keeps growing until we do something. So yes, it feels like, oh, the states come in and they're telling us what to do, because you showed us what your priorities are for 50 years. From before then, downzoning in Berkeley started in 1916. You've showed us what your priorities are, and now the ramifications are here, and people are literally dying and starving. So yes, someone stepped in to help mitigate the situation. So if you don't want the state all up in your business, meet your RENA numbers on your own terms. You have that opportunity. Thank you.
Member Corr.
I would like to make a comment on propose a motion. Since there is no alternative solution that was proposed when given the chance, I feel like this bill should be supported for the lack of an alternative solution. And then it seems to be only the cities who oppose this bill seem to be the one who have not met their requirements. So we are considered a model city, and as I think the mayor has pointed out, we are not even in the situation where we would have to face any kind of consequences for that. So if there is no further comment, I would like to make a motion to support SB 423.
I will recognize you. The way it works is a motion is made, a second is made, then I call for debate on the motion. Please just give me a moment. Motion by Corr and a second by Vice Mayor Welch. I recognize Member Pryforce.
So thank you. I apologize for that. So what you heard was the mayor admit this isn't about homelessness. Even though that tends to be the spear that's used. Sorry, Nickelodeon, I know you got to go back and forth. It's okay. So it's this isn't about homelessness, right? This is about being able to build it faster. I've lived Emeryville for a while, and I got to know very well the unhoused encampment that was near my building at the Courtyards, 65th, for years. Got to know those folks, even allow them to gain access. Even though I know I wasn't supposed to, we have a little shower near our pool, and so I would let them shower there. And anything I could give, I'd give there. Those folks don't live in Emeryville. They were cleared out. Actually, most of the encampments in Emeryville, they were cleared out. Do those folks live in Emeryville? No, they do not. And so earlier when we talked about records, in terms of your record, Mayor, the record has actually been that great for the unhoused unhoused people. I'm learning to use my language better. Unhoused peoples in Emeryville. And so, yes, Emeryville is the model city for big real estate, for developers. We're doing everything they want us to do, and it's the reason why the Chronicle, I read your article, Councilmember Welsh, Vice Mayor Welsh, in response to the article, the San Francisco Chronicle, that called us the most YIMBY council, I believe. The most YIMBY council, most YIMBY city. Yeah, I think so. And what does that mean? That means developer control of Emeryville. You all know it. Those of you who are out there listening, watching this, you know the history of Emeryville. When I go to Sacramento, there's two things that they use to describe Emeryville that I find quite offensive. I won't say what the other one is, but the one that pops up a lot is developer-controlled Emeryville. That's what they call us. And so, so it makes sense that every bill that I have pulled has been green-lighted by the council, unanimous, 4-1, where they cater to not only just anti-democratic approaches, and in this bill specifically, doesn't address homelessness, doesn't address unhoused peoples, just gets developers more power. That's what this is about. And so, I can cite my background. I can cite a whole lot of things that would make me qualified, but really, I'm not an expert when it comes to homelessness. I'm not an expert when it comes to unhoused peoples. I just know that there are people who need automatic doors to open in Emeryville, and we didn't do that. We're still trying to fight against that. There's package theft problems in Emeryville. Still haven't addressed some of those issues. Security, I uploaded a video of somebody in my own mailroom who got robbed at gunpoint here in Emeryville. When you talk about it being a model city, I don't think you're talking past tense. I think you're talking future tense. That Emeryville is a model city for developers to have free reign. And this bill just empowers that. So then we just want to replicate the Emeryville model to the rest of the state? Is that what we're arguing? No. That's not, I'm not arguing it. My colleagues are. And no. What's good for Emeryville is good for Emeryville. And honestly, when it comes to equity, Emeryville can be better. But I'm not going to ask San Jose to be Emeryville. I'm not going to ask Milpitas to be Emeryville. I'm not going to ask Fremont and other places to be Emeryville. You live in those cities, you have every right. And the creative use of the term local control isn't really about local control. It's about neighborhoods. your neighborhood, your voice, and how much it matters. And I believe that it matters so much so that I'm willing to stand not only with the League of California Cities, but the many unions where this bill, it kind of cuts them out of the building process, of them being allowed to be a part of the process. I mean, I think Wiener was able to squeeze one union to be a part of it. And with the right money, because he's got a whole lot of money, he may be able to get some more. But right now, there are a lot of people, a lot of cities, who don't want to stand for this bill. And I stand with them.
Member Mora?
So just briefly, I do want to make it very clear in case it wasn't made clear earlier. This bill is absolutely about addressing homelessness. It's absolutely about affordable housing, and it's about getting other cities to do their part to solve those very, very big problems. It doesn't matter what else you do on homelessness. If cities are not building the necessary housing stock, then it'll come to nothing. So that's why I support this, and we should continue the vote.
Okay, is there anybody who would like to discuss further before I call for the vote? Vice Mayor Welch, you want to?
No, I just want to know what San Francisco Chronicle article was I listed in as the most YIMBY mayor? What San Francisco Chronicle article was that?
Are you asking me a question?
Yes,
Vice
I
Mayor
am,
Welch?
because you're the one that made the statement.
So you wrote a Cows Matters article last year.
That's not the San Francisco Chronicle.
Councilmember Welch, I don't want to interrupt you, so I'm asking you not to interrupt me. So you wrote a Cows Matter article last year. I believe it was around March, so it's about 1 year anniversary. In defense of you were a new council member, in defense of the article that came out of the San Francisco Chronicle that stated that we are the most YIMBY city council, I think either in the state or in America, I don't know, but I know that one YIMBY like Twitter account or something, out of the entire country, they had a graph. It was, some sort of joke. But Councilmember Welch, you were on the graph, and Mayor Bowders, Vice Mayor Welch, and Mayor Bowders, you were on that graph. So out of all the city, can you imagine how many cities there are in America? It's two of the people who are in the graph of I think was less than 25, 30 people are mentioned, are cited in that graph. And, and it just shows that the interests that exist when it comes to big real estate and the developers in Emeryville. And you know what? And I remember when I first came, into this, I believe I told Adam, the acting city manager, I said, look, I know what I'm dealing with. I know I'm dealing with a very YIMBY influenced city council. And when it comes to housing stuff, I don't speak too much on it because it's, like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't have a PhD or a master's degree in this stuff. But what I do know is that the argument that was used by the mayor was about defending developer profits. That when you said that we have this amount of affordable housing, and that if they don't get to be able to build and match that, they don't make as much money. And as a business person, being in a room with a lot of these folks, the difference between super duper wealthy, super wealthy, and wealthy, there is a difference. We're not hurting them. It's the difference between them being able to go, be able to afford. They're not hurting. And so all this talk about markets and all this talk about is usually the talk from people who don't have a business background enough to know when we're a part of a game, and that game is you, a new council member, decided to write in defense of a position that the council That included Diane Martinez, who is now planning commissioner. I mean, wake up, folks. I mean, can we not see the writing on the wall that, you know, this is what influence looks like? This is what big money influence looks like. And so, you know, so I hope I answered your question. You wrote an article, a CalManus article, in response to another article that claimed that we are the most YIMBY council, I believe, in the state or in the
I
country.
recognize Vice Mayor Welch.
So you clearly didn't read the article, but I'll read the title out for everyone. Every city in California needs to do its fair share to create more housing. Guest commentary by Courtney Welch. And that kind of plays into what we're talking about right now. Everybody needs to do their share. We are a region. We are impacted by the movements or the resistance to do the right thing. Can we take a vote?
We can. There is a motion by Member Corr. It was seconded by Vice Mayor Welch to approve a position of support for Senate Bill 423. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Mora?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce? Nay. Vice Mayor Welch?
Aye.
And Mayor Bowders.
Aye. Thank you. That passes. Thank you, Niccolo, for being here. I hope the boys are tucked in bed and send
That's why I was texting.
send my condolences to your wife.
I will. She said they're all in our bed, so I guess I'm
Yeah,
sleeping on the couch tonight.
so you're, yeah.
Thanks, everyone. And I'll
I
get working
appreciate
those
you,
later.
Niccolo, so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Get home safely, please. Item 13 is department head reports. Are there any this evening?
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Item 14 is future agenda items. Are there any requests for a future agenda item? Seeing none. Item 15 is adjournment. Madam Clerk, the time is 9:44 and we're adjourned. Thank you.
Stopped. Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening, everybody. The time is 9:46 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Emeryville Special Closed Session meeting. I'd like to note for the record this meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, and as was announced earlier, you can provide public comment via the Zoom feature using the raise hand feature or by calling in and pressing *9. I'll ask if the clerk would take the roll.
Councilmember Carr?
Present.
Councilmember Mora?
Present.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Present.
Vice Mayor Welch?
Here.
And Mayor Bowders.
Here. Are there any ex parte communications to report? Okay, seeing and hearing none, now is the time for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to comment on the closed session items has an opportunity to do so. Do we have any hands raised?
No, Mayor.
Okay, public comment is closed. We're going to adjourn to closed session at 9:47. Welcome back. The time is 9:53 p.m. and we're back from the closed session. I would like to ask if City Attorney John Kennedy would please report out.
There was no reportable action taken in closed session today, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The time, Madam Clerk, is 9:53. Closed session meeting is adjourned.